So I'll play this slide now. This bar has covered the entire thing. So I'll have to play it in a smaller mode. Sarika?
Yeah, sure. Otherwise, if you want, I can do as well.
Yeah, it's mostly a voice. So
I recently read the book Emotional Agility by author Susan David. If you're challenged by someone in a work meeting and they make you feel stupid, how do you deal with the anxiety and the anger you feel? Do you bottle it or do you brood over it? If you're a bottler, you'll try to forget what happened and suppress your emotions. You'll distract yourself by doing busy work like checking email instead of having a private conversation with the person who just challenged you. Bottling is like storing a corrosive substance in a plastic bottle. You might be able to contain the toxic emotion and not think about it for a while, but soon it'll eat away at you and start to leak out. Psychologist and author Susan David says suppressed emotions inevitably surface in unintended ways. Perhaps you're angry with your brother. You try to suppress it. Then, after a glass of wine at Thanksgiving dinner, a snarky comment slips out of your mouth, and now you have a major family drama on your hands. She goes on to say that more than once, I've met bottlers who find themselves years later in the same miserable job, relationship, or circumstance because they haven't been in touch with a real emotion in years, which precludes any sort of real change or growth. If you're not a bottler, you might be a brooder. If you're a brooder and receive a rude comment in a meeting, you won't stop thinking about it, and you'll find it hard to focus on your work later in the day. Susan David says, brooders pay too much attention to their internal chatter and allow it to sap important cognitive resources that could be put to better use. With brooders, emotions become powerful in the same way a hurricane does, circling and picking up more energy with each pass. If you're a brooder and you work in an office, you'll walk around the office looking for someone to talk to, but the more you vent your emotions, the more you come across as self-absorbed and cause everyone around you to experience empathy fatigue. Whether you bottle or brood over distracting and uncomfortable emotions, those emotions get stronger and more destructive. Upon reflecting on my own emotional coping style, I realized that I'm a bottler and I need a better way to deal with uncomfortable and distracting emotions. After reading Emotional Agility by Susan David, I've learned and implemented the following 4-step process to deal with every distracting emotion in a productive manner. The first step to becoming emotionally agile is to name your emotion. Several years ago, Susan worked with a man named Thomas who had lost his job, his wife, and was living on the streets. When Susan asked Thomas to explain how he felt about his dire situation, he replied with, "Just a little bit of bother." When Susan asked Thomas how his mother was, the closest person in his life at the time, he said, "It's just been a little bit of a bother. She died." His ability to name his emotions has caused emotions like fear and anxiety to ruin his life. Unnamed emotions can cause uncontrollable stress. It's like walking through the forest and hearing something in the bushes and thinking it's a cougar ready to jump out and eat you. But if you look closely, you can see it's just a harmless fox. To name an emotion, you need to face an emotion and think to yourself, oh, I'm experiencing uncertainty, or oh, I'm feeling insecure, or oh, I'm starting to feel angry. Author Susan David says, learning to label emotions with more nuanced vocabulary can be absolutely transformative. People who can identify the full spectrum of emotion, who realize how, for example, sadness differs from boredom, or pity, or loneliness, or nervousness, do much, much better at managing the ups and downs of ordinary existence than those who see everything in black and white. Now, after you've named a distracting and uncomfortable emotion, don't fight it, accept it. Our consumer culture has taught us that the goal is to always be happy. If you're not happy, there's a product out there for you to make you forget about your worries and feel good. But Susan says, the goal is not to always feel good. The goal is to deal with destructive thoughts and emotions so you don't get hooked, i.e. you don't identify with your emotions and derail your progress, your relationships, and your career or business. When you accept a negative emotion instead of running away from it or fighting it, you strip that emotion of its power. As Susan says, we end the tug of war by dropping the rope. To accept your emotions, simply feel your emotion without judging it. An emotion is neither good nor bad, it just is. But now just because you've accepted an emotion, that doesn't mean you need to listen to it. An emotion is like a person in the backseat of a car telling you where to go. If you can learn to step out of your emotion, step number 3, you can see that your emotion has no power over you. To step out of your emotion, you have to imagine yourself standing outside of your body and your feelings and looking back at yourself with curiosity. By stepping out and detaching yourself from your emotion to simply observe your emotion rise and fall, you start to, as Susan says, see yourself as a chessboard filled with possibilities rather than any one piece on the board confined to a certain preordained move. When you hear a rude comment and experience anger, you don't have to react aggressively. You can step out of your emotion for a second and choose to respond in a thoughtful manner. When you feel anxious in a social setting, you don't need to instinctively reach for your phone and distract yourself. Instead, you can step out of your emotion, watch your anxiety rise and fall, and choose to be polite and start a conversation with the people around you. When you step out of your emotion, you get a chance to remember what matters to you and complete step number 4, act according to your values. When you're experiencing an intense emotion, it's like you're driving in a dense fog. But by stepping out, it's as if the fog has suddenly lifted and you get to see the road ahead, the signposts on the edge of the road, and the sun on the horizon. Those signposts signify your goals and your values. There are specific people that you value more than others. There are specific activities that bring you more joy than others. And there are specific goals in your life that matter most. You can forget those values when you're consumed by an emotion like stress or anxiety. You can work too much and neglect your family. You can yell at someone you love, or you can binge eat to cope with your stress when you really value your health. But now that you've named, accepted, and stepped out of your emotion, you get the opportunity to ask yourself, if I react to this emotion, am I acting according to my values? If you get in the habit of asking this question whenever you feel a distracting and uncomfortable emotion, then those emotions become a reminder to act according to what you value and choose to live a life that matters. As Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and author of Man's Search for Meaning, once said, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That was the core message that I gathered from Emotional Agility by Susan David.
So this is a new, rather path-breaking kind of a book that has been written by Susan David. Now, if we were to talk about this particular slide, and if we were to talk about bottling and brooding, now bottling has a lot of very unhealthy consequences. A few of them I would like to name. One is getting ulcers. The other is suffering from insomnia. And thirdly is the onset of blood pressure and heart disease. So why are these dangerous? Well, ulcers definitely can be very painful, and ulcers can also cause all kinds of complications in the gut, and in the long run ulcers can even become cancerous. So that is why ulcers are dangerous. Insomnia does not allow us to sleep, so therefore it results in an increase in blood pressure, it results in an increase in blood sugar, and it also makes us feel very, very drained and exhausted. Then, as far as heart disease is concerned, definitely we find that there are a lot of cases where so many people have recently passed away due to cardiac arrest, and that is also happening because people are not able to handle stress because they're keeping everything bottled up inside them. So this is the aspect which damages self as far as bottling up is concerned. Now brooding damages self as well as has a negative impact on other people also. So brooding is that negative self chatter that keeps going on within our minds, and it keeps telling us that you're inferior, you screwed up, you're not good enough, all these kind of things. So which actually creates an inferiority complex within us. And then when we go around cribbing to our friends, then you know that negativity either rubs off onto them, or when they see us coming they want to avoid us and some way or the other they find of not wanting to associate with us. So therefore, these are things that we need to be really careful about, and we will come back to more of this later. Okay. These are the 4 pillars, okay, of emotional agility: showing up, stepping out, walking your why, and moving on. Now I'll give you certain examples, okay, certain examples from real life, which actually illustrate to us what these values are. Now, if you were to look at the Mahabharata, okay, and suppose you see the role of Arjun by showing up on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjun has been carrying out what his bounden duty was. However, it was stepping out into which Arjun was facing immense problem. So, you know, when Sri Krishna and Arjun were there in the chariot, at that point in time, Sri Krishna found that Arjun is completely paralyzed in terms of, he's not really taking any initiative. He found that he looks very disturbed, he looks very anxious. So that is the time when Krishna told him that you do not have to worry about how closely related these people are to you, because Arjun had told Krishna that these are my kith and kin. I mean, how can I fight them in battle? So that is when Sri Krishna advised him that you need to step out of yourself and you need to look at it from the point of view of Kshatriya Dharma. And as per Kshatriya Dharma, you should be actually engaging in warfare with these people, because what they're doing is actually not good. And so he actually prompted Arjun into walking his why. Okay, so Arjun was able to find his purpose. So like Simon Sinek also has written that book, Start with Why. So Arjun got his why very, very strong, and he then got into the swing of things. So this is something that I'm telling you, which is from a past event. Now, if we cut to the present, okay. Now, there was a psychologist who had somebody who was a patient with her, and that person was suffering from very, very severe weight issues. Now here I will bring you, when we are talking of walking your why, there are things that are told to us which we ought to do, and there are things which we want to do, and it is always the want to do which predominates over the ought to do. So this person, he had been told by his cardiologist, he had been told by his wife that he must reduce weight drastically. But in spite of that, he got nowhere. Now look at it in a simple way. Suppose you're on a diet. You're on a diet and you open your fridge and you see that very tempting gooey chocolate cake. Okay. Now your brain may tell you that kick in your willpower and don't have that chocolate cake. However, your unconscious mind has very, very rapidly, okay, in just 195 milliseconds, it has processed what a wonderful piece of cake that is. So irrespective of what your cortex is going to tell, it has already made the decision that you need to eat that cake, and you will go ahead and eat it. So interestingly, this patient adopted an orphan child from Nicaragua. Now, that orphan child had was a little slow in learning. However, he was excellent at making sketches. So when that child became 13 years old, this person told the child that you're very good at pictures. Why don't you draw a picture of yourself? So the child drew a beautiful sketch of himself, and he labeled it the orphan teenager. So this man asked the child, why did you label it the orphan teenager? You were an orphan as a small little child. However, I've adopted you, and now I'm there for you, and you're a teenager. So the child looked at the person and says, yes. However, if you don't lose weight, I may lose you and I may again become an orphan. So that really, really motivated that person. And he went on to a diet regimen. He went on to do exercise, and he got much better at what all he was doing. Okay. So ultimately, we have to move on. So we have to have small, deliberate tweaks to our mindset, to our motivation, and to our habits, and in ways that are infused with your values, you can make a powerful difference in your life. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing right now before we get into an exercise. First, let's have some reflections on what has happened so far, and then after that, we'll go in for the exercise. Who would like to go first?
I can do it.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Okay. So basically, I understood that emotional agility is approaching one's experiences mindfully
Okay.
and productively trying to deal with it. And
Mhm.
it's very different from emotional intelligence. So if a person may be emotionally intelligent but may still not be emotionally agile.
Okay. Sure.
And basically the most important is you don't bottle it up and don't brood over it. In the alternative, label it and try and see how you manage it. So these are some of the points that I got.
Excellent, fantastic. I think you've derived a lot of value from that. Thanks so much for sharing, Anupama. And
Thank you.
I see Loy's video is also on. So,
yes.
And Loy is smiling also. So I think Loy is all set. Yeah, Loy, tell us what's going through your mind.
Yes, I love the distinction between bottling and brooding, which I've never heard before. So I used to think it's the same process. Anyway, you're just doing the same thing. You're just putting it within you. So I liked the distinction between that. I like the NASA step that has been shared by Susan David. I think that the steps are really very clear into what needs to be done and how you can move into each of the stages. I am particularly intrigued by a word that was used in that video called empathy fatigue.
Yeah.
And because I've always thought you have to keep on empathizing. But empathy fit, as I said, the word intrigued. I mean, particularly intrigued by that. And I think the NASA steps, the examples that were shared, were really very powerful.
Yeah. So, Loy, to just tell you more about empathy fatigue, there are actually this is found a lot amongst RMOs, resident medical officers. So, these medical students, they suffer from empathy distress and empathy burnout. So empathy distress is where they tend to be very, very overwhelmed by the empathy which they show to the patients, and it ultimately results in empathy burnout. So empathy burnout means that then they become so used to all this stuff that they don't really get very much affected by what is happening, and it's a kind of numbing that happens to people. Okay.
Very interesting. Yes, and I think that example that you shared made the connect very well. Yes, thank you.
Okay, okay, okay. So, anyone else like to share something before I talk about what activity I would like you all to do?
Yes, sir, Ashwin here.
Yes, Ashwin.
So, the few things, which I really love is that about emotional agility is that it's like that is the stepping out of your zone and watching the emotions. This very similar to having this. I went through a mindfulness class actually
Okay, okay.
2 weeks ago, wherein they said the same thing. They spoke about the same how to watch your thoughts, watch your emotions, so that there is a distance between you and what your emotion and what your thought is ultimately when the practice gets stronger. So I
Yeah.
see a very strong correlation between the two here,
Mhm.
and in the steps Susan has given. And one more thing which I also found very interesting is that the empathy fatigue, which actually I do a lot in my office. So people keep coming to me, so pouring their problems, worries, and in my office there's no difference between the L&D and HR professional. They think that I'm a HR professional, and they
Okay.
think that they come to me and pouring out their worries and everything. So it has got so used to me that I'm like from a neutral standpoint, right? So like I'm totally nonplussed. So I could perfectly relate with that. So these two moments I think are aha moments for me listening to today's session.
Okay, okay, okay. Fantastic. So great. Then what I'm going to do, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to request Sarika to divide you all. You all are five of you, so maybe you can be two people in one room and three people in another room. So you will need to exercise vulnerability with each other. So share with each other any particular problem that you're working on, and take the other help of the other person in how you might like to cope with the problem. Then after 10 minutes, when you come back to the class, if if you wish to maintain the confidentiality of your conversation, that's absolutely fine. That's not an issue. You can just tell us what is the manner in which you found support from your partner, or in the case of three people, from your partners, in coping with whatever you wanted to cope with going forward. Okay. So is the exercise understood?
Yes, sir.
You've understood, no? Okay, okay, thanks. So Sarika can.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ashwin, you also understood, no? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay.
So 10 minutes, right, sir?
Yeah, 10 minutes. Yeah, Sarika put a 10-minute timer. Then
Yeah.
after 10 minutes, they'll all come back from their rooms, and then whoever wants to share will share, and they will also share to the extent they want to, because we respect everyone's confidentiality. They can always decontextualize the thing and speak in more generic terms. That's not an issue.
Sure. So I'll open the rooms now. Two
Yeah,
rooms
yeah,
are
yeah, yeah. So everyone's back? All back?
No, other room is still not back. One room is back.
Okay. Yeah. Correct.
They are having probably the long discussion.
Okay. Not an issue. Definitely will look forward to feed forward from each of the participants about the process that they underwent. Okay.
Yes, all are back, sir.
All are back. Okay. So let's have you all go up on stage in any sequence. You can go up and you can just describe how you found your experience and how you believe that and this exchange that you had with your partner or with your partners will help you in life going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I'll start again.
Yeah, sure.
One thing that I understood from Loy is I think she handled a family-related issue quite well, being married and dealing with different human beings. And I think one thing that I really got to learn from her, she's quite grounded.
Okay.
She knows, how to deal with a situation, to walk away from it, when something happens.
Wow, wonderful.
Yeah, and I am more reactive, or I'm better than what I was before, but I still take time to I don't really respond, but more reactive. So when I listened to her, I thought there's something that I could learn from her.
Wow, very good. So congratulations, Loy. I think that's some fantastic praise that Anupama has given you, and I will congratulate Anupama also for being so generous in appreciating what Loy has offered and also being so open about her own vulnerability, which I greatly respect. Great, good going. Yeah. So Loy.
With her praise that she has showered on me, and I think what I felt, maybe the openness to share was more when I felt Anupama was listening to me very keenly. She was asking me questions here and there.
Okay.
So, and I think I was also comfortable because she was not connected to the problem. So the person is external to the problem, and this is probably the first time I'm sharing it with somebody like that also. So her listening, her qualities of listening, and the way she asked a little bit more questions was something that has something that enabled me to share more and to trust more. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. That's great. So, Loy and everybody, just to tell you all, it's this is something that we acknowledge in emotional intelligence, that when there is an issue at an emotional level, it is always better to share it with somebody who is not directly involved in that process. Okay, so if you have a disinterested party, I'm not saying uninterested party, okay, I'm saying disinterested party. When you have a disinterested party, it makes a big difference, and that has a very powerful impact, and this is especially important for us as coaches. Okay, so the being able to be unbiased in that manner, and giving a person a space of what we call psychological safety. That space of psychological safety is so important. And great. So now we come to the other room. Yes.
Hi, sir. So,
Yeah, Pratishtha.
It was the three of us, and no, we did not have much time to discuss about everybody's concerns. But I think we did take up what Ashwin had in mind. And
Okay.
no, of course, like he had shared yesterday, also, he's been struggling with certain expectations and it's been bogging him down. So,
Okay.
one thing I understood with him was that he has at least come to a state where he's aware of what's troubling him.
Mm-hmm.
He is comfortable with the fact that he's looking for that help. And
Okay.
I think for somebody to cope with the difficulty, of course, identifying the problem in itself is the biggest
Absolutely. Absolutely.
first
And
step, the openness to do that. So I think in the discussion that we had also, we were able to use what we studied here. And I think uh, the plus I had was just these 3.5 years of work as well. So I think we were able to come to a point where he got all thoughtful and he was able to reflect. And I think rest Ashwin will be able to share.
yeah. Sure, sure. And before Ashwin shares, I would surely like to compliment both you and Kalpana on enabling him to share so openly, which I think, given the fact that he may hardly be knowing you all well, he still did that quite a lot, which now we will hear from Ashwin. Yes, Ashwin.
Yeah, thank you so much, Milan sir. So, what I expressed was a very uncommon common problem wherein my parents were facing mental health issues, and because of that, this certain level of expectations is very high on me,
Mm-hmm.
and I find it sometimes really overwhelming to handle it because of the schizophrenia my mother has got,
Okay.
and so I expressed that, and Pratishtha was very agile in understanding what I was going through, and the way she put the 4 steps ahead. I now it's actually I've got me thinking whether it is really the expectation, or am I really my value of starting to, because I'm very vehement to cure people, cure my parents on the whatever mental health issues, whereas the doctors themselves have said that there's nothing much we can do about. So maybe that is pushing me hard, or is it really because of the expectation? Maybe not the expectation. So it has enabled me to reflect and think now. Is it, maybe I'm the problem, maybe. So, maybe my values are a problem. So I think I'll have to think deeper. Now it's talking to her has made me reflect deeper now.
Okay. Okay.
So reflect deeper. Yes. So I think probably now if I think more, or if I reflect more, I think maybe I'll get to the bottom line of this problem.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. So, Ashwin, I have one question for you.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of people have so much hesitation about mental health issues. However, you have stated upfront that you have dealt with the mental health issues of your parents. So, can you share with us a little about how you managed to get over these inhibitions? Because that is something so difficult for so many people to do. So, which I think is
Exactly.
a fantastic accomplishment on your part. So, if you could share a little about how you managed to do that, you know.
Sure, sir. I'll do it. So it's a very long story, but I'll shorten it up as soon as possible. My mother was actually having symptoms of almost for 10 years. We had a personal family tragedy. From then, she was having symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia, which we didn't know until 5 years ago.
Okay.
My father also got affected. He was the one who bore the brunt of my mother's bouts of anger and hysteria. So
Mhm.
she was in a maniacal stage at that time, 5 years ago. So
Okay.
I was the one who identified that there is some really mental health issues that she's facing, and what I did first, I couldn't come into terms with that because of being my own mother and parent and
Mhm.
all these things. So, but I couldn't see my father's plight. So what I did was that I ran away from my home and started meeting randomly everyone who could I really help, talk to, and get help on. And that is when I we met one of my family doctors who suggested a psychiatrist, and that is when I spoke to the psychiatrist, and he said that this paranoid schizophrenia, which is your mother is experiencing, and it's because of one person's tragedy. We the entire family faced. So maybe this because of that, or maybe she had a traumatic childhood. And that's when I started boring into my mother's childhood, actually, talking to my mother's brother and sisters and everyone. And it seems that she had a traumatic childhood. Maybe loneliness when her mother died at a very, very young age. So facing that. And that is when, so I started empathizing and I wanted to really fix it. But when I went to the psychiatrist, he said that she's beyond redemption. She's almost 2 levels below the final stage of going completely, mad. But I didn't give up. The only way but that we could bring her to at least the other stage of the other side of the spectrum, called as the a normalcy, or sometimes she gets little unstable, is through shock treatment, and it's very painful for me to take her through the shock treatment. But we still had to do the 10 sittings, and now she very, 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 very less frequently she goes through that hysterical stage, but she's mostly sometimes she's calm, and sometimes she keeps talking a lot. So this is what. So I still have to meet the doctor, so that I still have the faith that she can come back to normalcy. But I don't want to accept with the doctors whatever they say. But I still keep trying.
Wow. So we often talk about resilience, and we talk about courage. So I think that Ashwin, you have represented this in the flesh so beautifully, and congratulations to you. Hats off to you for this, and do continue with the fab work that you're doing, that restores the faith of people in humanity, and in the regard that children have for their parents and all that. Very good, very good. Thanks. And finally, welcome. And finally, Kalpana, what would you like to share about the experience you had in the room? So are you there, Kalpana? Okay.
Sir, I have language problem, so please,
Which language are you comfortable in?
as a Hindi.
हाँ तो हिंदी में बात कर लीजिए. If the others are okay with it, that's fine. Is it okay? May she speak in Hindi, please, if she has some challenges? Okay. I saw a lot of thumbs up. तो आप बेशक हिंदी में बात कर लीजिए.
ओके. और एक बात बता दीजिए मुझे, मैं थोड़ा लेट हो गई तो सब्जेक्ट समझ में नहीं आया मुझे.
अच्छा, तो आज जो है ना, हम लोग इमोशनल एजिलिटी की बात कर रहे हैं. हाँ. तो मतलब वो
एजिलिटी मींस व्हाट सर?
एजिलिटी मतलब इंसान जब फुर्तीला होता है ना, तो हम उसको एजाइल बोलते हैं. हाँ. तो जज्बाती फुर्तीलापन जो है, उसको हम इमोशनल एजिलिटी बोलते हैं. ठीक है. हाँ.
अरे बाप रे.
मतलब इंसान अपने जज्बात को बड़े आसानी से मतलब तोड़ मरोड़ सकता है, उसको किसी भी साँचे में ढाल सकता है, उसको हम इमोशनल एजिलिटी बोलते हैं. ठीक है.
हाँ. मैं बाद में बोलूंगी सर. मैं
आप बाद में. अच्छा, ठीक है. जैसे आपको सुविधा हो, हाँ, उस हिसाब से आप उसको कर लीजिएगा. ओके, ठीक है. So then, great. We will continue with the presentation. Share C3 HL. Start from current slide. So all of us have seen that whenever we flex muscles, whenever we build on those muscles become stronger and stronger. There are 5 simple words that we need to bear in mind. What we practice becomes stronger. If we keep these 5 words in mind, what we practice becomes stronger. Then we will always find ourselves on the right path. So it's not a bend but don't break it trait. Rather, resilience is accepting the fact that I'm broken and continue to grow with the broken pieces together. So resilio is the Latin word which means to bounce back. So when we are able to bounce back from difficult situations, that is what real resilience is. Now I'll give you a couple of examples of resilience which involve famous incidents in history. Okay, so one very famous incident in history was the fight in Zaire between George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. Okay, this was for the world heavyweight boxing. So Muhammad Ali at that time, he used a technique that is called the rope or dope technique, and he was resilient enough to keep taking whatever punishment George Foreman gave him over a period of 7 rounds, okay, which is a lot of punishment. Ultimately, George Foreman got exhausted punching Muhammad Ali. And then in the 8th round, Muhammad Ali really went for it and he knocked out Foreman to win the fight. Okay, so that was a fantastic example of resilience. Another example of resilience we find is in World War II. In World War II, there was a very powerful British ship called the HMS Hood. So it was one of the fastest ships in the waters and it had a lot of firepower. And this was ranged against the German ship Bismarck. So when Bismarck and Hood engaged each other in battle, guess who won? Well, it was the Bismarck. Although the Hood was faster, although the Hood had more firepower, it had less resilience. It was not able to take punishment of shells the way Bismarck was geared to do it. And ultimately, the Bismarck sunk the Hood. So that is how we see that resilience is something which always pays in the long run. And the more we are able to build our resilience, the stronger we are able to become. So this is a very deep kind of a thing, and it's worthwhile our spending a little time on this. So we need to know our real nature. We need to know our real nature, and we need to be completely self-aware. To recall again to you, what is self-awareness? Okay, self-awareness is emotional awareness, it's accurate self-assessment, and after that, it is also self-confidence. Then we talk of the Vedantic concept. Now, later on in the presentation, we will again go into an exercise where we will do an exercise on who am I, because who am I is a very, very interesting subject. And in MML, it is treated so beautifully. A lot of illustration and a lot of depth which this gets taken into in MML, and it's a very core value. So we will surely go through this exercise. Then we need to empty our mind. Okay, we need to empty our mind of unpleasant memories. We need to exercise forgiveness. We need to let go of certain things of right versus wrong. Now here I will talk to you about a parable. I'll talk to you about a parable of two monks who were wanting to cross a river. Maybe some of you may have heard this, but still bear with me, hear me out. So there were these two monks who were standing at the side of a river, and they wanted to cross the river, and there was a woman also who wanted to cross the river. So one of the monks said, no problem, I'll carry you with me and take you across the river. So they crossed the river, then the monks kept going forward. Then the other monk said to the monk who carried the woman, He said that we have all these vows that we will, never have any contact with women, and yet, you picked her up and you carried her across the river and all that. So the second monk smiled at that monk and said that I put her down long ago. You are the one who is still carrying her. So therefore, we need to empty our mind. Whenever we empty our mind and whenever we adopt what is called a blank slate, a tabula rasa, that is something that helps us to again learn new things. Like, why do we format a disk, or why do we clear a screen? We do that so that we're able to again get the right kind of imprints, the right kind of inputs on that. So, and then we need to embrace positive psychology. We need to work, understand for ourselves what is working, what is not, and we need to work on our strengths. Then again, suffering is an integral part of human life. It's a reality of human life, and it is as per the law of karma. And then you have a natural balance. When we talk of the control compass, again, the serenity prayer comes to mind. So what does the serenity prayer says? The serenity prayer says that God, give me the courage to change the things that I can, the patience to put up with those that I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. And then we have to work with purpose. We have to have a mindful purpose. We have to have long-term goals, and we need to keep analyzing for ourselves whether what we are doing is correct or we need some kind of a mid-course correction in this. Okay. Okay, so any reflections so far on mindfulness and resilience?
No, sir.
No? Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
I had a question.
Yeah,
So,
please.
if we look at like the 6 steps that we just spoke about, is it that one needs to cross, like be able to achieve all of those 6 to reach somewhere, or is it that one could, like we could be stuck at one and the others could be done, or no, maybe we've achieved a few and some are left? How does that?
Yeah, see, I'll give you an analogy. Okay. Have you heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yes.
So in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, doesn't it sometimes happen that we skip certain steps? It's not necessary that we may go through all the steps of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Right.
So similarly over here, these are what are recommended, but there are times when we may, based on the situation, we may skip certain steps also, and still it will work out for us. This is a recommended path, but it is not as if things will not happen without it.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you. Jesus,
Yeah,
thank you.
welcome. So just one small thing I want to share with you all regarding mindfulness before I move further. There is a book called The Art of Power by Thich Nhat Hanh. Okay, Thich Nhat Hanh is a Buddhist monk from Vietnam. So he has talked about the power of mindfulness. And in this kind of theory that he has propagated, he has given the analogy of some very healthy food, and on the other hand, a greasy hamburger. And he said, if you eat that greasy hamburger very, very mindfully, you may derive more benefit than even the healthy food eaten completely unmindfully. Okay, so what do people do? People eat while reading the newspaper, people eat while watching television. So actually the kind of focus that needs to be given to the food, and therefore the way all the digestive processes and all need to kick in, that doesn't happen. On the other hand, if somebody is eating even that burger, but is eating it with full concentration, then whatever little nutrient is there in it, that person will derive benefit from it. So therefore, mindfulness makes a lot of difference in the kind of value that we bring to the table. Okay, so that's the thing. Emotional mastery. Okay, now emotional mastery is a very good state to achieve. The only thing I would say is that emotional mastery is more a journey than a destination, because like they say that the race for quality has no finishing line. Similarly, I think even the race for emotional mastery does not have any finishing line. We do not really achieve emotional mastery. However, it's like Kaizen. It's a process of continuous improvement that we're doing to achieve emotional mastery.
Today we look at the stories of two different men, two different worldviews, two different goals, and ultimately, two different paths. This is Alexander. He believes that there are two kinds of people in the world, the conquerors and the conquered. If you want to be great, you have to become a conqueror. It's a dog-eat-dog world, and only the fit survive. You have to determine who will conquer with you and whom you must conquer. Alexander read a lot as a kid. He fell in love with Greek heroes who displayed the highest virtues, courage and bravery. They were leaders, not followers. He didn't have much as a kid and had to work hard for everything that he had. This led him to believe that a person's life is the outcome of their actions, and that they must take complete responsibility for what happens to them. Physically and intellectually, he held himself to incredibly high standards. There's no one he wanted to conquer more than himself. One day, he encountered a homeless man. The man asked him for some change. Alexander knew what he was seeing. A conquered man. How could this man let himself be conquered so badly? How many mistakes must he have made to end up in this position? Why doesn't he take steps to dig himself out of this hole? Instead, he's taking the lazy way out. He's trying to take from those who worked hard for what they have. Those who make good decisions should not be punished by those who make bad decisions. Alexander knew that if the man wanted to eat, he needed to learn how to get fish and not have fish given to him. He became enraged by the man's weakness. This man won't get a penny from me, he thought to himself. That would only enable his destructive behaviors and poor attitude towards life. By suffering, he'll learn or he'll die. That's the way the world works. This is Joseph. He believes that there are two kinds of people in the world. Those who can help and those who need to be helped. His father taught him that the highest good is to serve those who have nothing and to lift them up. Life is difficult and those who have should serve those who have not. Joseph read a lot as a kid. He fell in love with very spiritual leaders who loved all and lived to serve. He grew up quite well off and always felt indebted to those who didn't. He felt lucky to have everything that he did. One day, he encountered a homeless man. The man asked him for some change. Joseph knew what he was seeing. A completely underserved man. This man had been abandoned by society. Joseph felt like weeping. Imagine how much we have failed as a society to let someone get to this point, he thought to himself. Life is so difficult and full of suffering and based on luck that any one of us could end up in his position. He grabbed some money from his pocket and handed it to the man. And with that, both stories end here. Both men had unique worldviews shaped by their past experiences. They both perceived the same man in a different light. Where one saw a weak man, the other saw a forsaken man. Their perceptions led them to feel different emotions. Their emotions were heavily affected by what they thought they were seeing. In actuality, both men knew nothing about the homeless man, and they have no idea what led him to this position. This is often the case in real life. From a young age, both men were surrounded by an invisible structure, referred to as culture or environment. The knowledge they grab from this structure allows them to navigate the world. Alex grew up in a structure of personal responsibility, of strength and weakness. He can only see people in this way. It's all he knows. Joseph grew up in a structure of collective responsibility, of the needy and the fortunate. He can only see people in this way. It's all he knows. For both men, emotions are tools. In Alex's world, anger is a useful tool that allows him to become strong, his highest ideal. In Joseph's world, compassion is a useful tool that allows you to become a giver, his highest ideal. One might wonder, if you could change the invisible structure that surrounds these men, if they reversed the books they read or the family that they had, would they perceive the world differently? If they perceive the world differently, would they feel differently? The master of emotions, then, is the one who can alter the invisible structure around them. This allows them to gather a diverse set of concepts, which allows them to see the same scenario in different ways. They would be neither Alexander nor Joseph. They would be both. They could become either one depending on the circumstances. Take a look at this image. What shapes do you see? You'd probably say a bunch of 3/4 circles and a square. Technically, there's actually no square there. It's simply a byproduct of how the 3/4 circles are arranged. But that doesn't change the fact that you'll always see it there because you're familiar with the concept of a square. If you never learned what a square was, you never see it there in the image. There's a layer of meaning hidden in the negative space. Emotional mastery is about perceiving multiple layers of meaning in the negative space of life. It's about seeing all of the potential realities that could exist. It's about looking at a homeless man and seeing that his position could be a byproduct of his personal decisions, or it could be the byproduct of a cultural failure. What I'm not saying is that these men can think different thoughts and change their emotions in the moment, but they can experience a different worldview now so they see differently in the future. They can find new ways of seeing or interacting with old things, and all they need to do is listen. Listen to the world in its many forms. Had they listened to one another's perspectives or asked the homeless man for his perspective, they might have seen the whole situation in a new light. As we conclude, let's return to this image. You probably think that there's nothing more to this image than the 3/4 circles and the square. But what if I told you that this is actually just one shape, a rectangle with 4 3/4 circles removed from it? It's called a fit rectangle. Just by listening, you now have a new way of perceiving these patterns which was invisible to you before. A new layer of meaning. So, how does one master the emotions? By listening. But more importantly, listening to points of view that they haven't heard before or that are contrary to their own. To feel differently, they have to see differently. To see differently, they have to gain knowledge that they don't have. And to gain knowledge that they don't have, they have to experience new things.
So I want to share with you all certain thought processes that flow from the video that we just saw. There are a couple of concepts of emotional intelligence, and there is one concept which is there in NLP also, which is very predominant in what we saw. So understanding others and leveraging diversity. This is what we can gather from emotional intelligence, and respecting the other person's model of the world. That is a presupposition. That's a presupposition of NLP also, which comes through very clearly in this. So what is the symbolism we see in the names of the people selected and their core natures that were displayed over here? So if anybody would like to talk about that symbolism, please go ahead. Otherwise, then I will explain it to you. Any connection you see between the names and the characters of Alexander and Joseph?
So Joseph was the one who redeemed, like if we look at the historical aspect as well, and Alexander the Conqueror.
Great. So
like, traits were similar to these people.
Yes. So Joseph, he established empathy and justice thanks to the position that Potiphar had given to him, and Alexander was the person who set out to conquer the world, right? So those were the worldviews based on the kind of values that had been inculcated in them since childhood. So Pratishtha, you're absolutely right on that, and I think let us give Pratishtha a round of applause. I've put my applause emoticon over there, and
Thank you.
okay, great. So what I also want to share with you all is that there are a lot of learnings which we acquire in our early childhood. So these are essentially parental tapes that are played to us. And in fact, Jesus has said that give me a child till the child is 7 years old, and after that you can do what you want with him. Because those are the formative years of our life, and those are when our values really get enshrined. Then, okay, so now these parental tapes, I went through a program. That program was at that time called Changing the Leopard's Spots. Now it has been renamed as Rediscovering Happiness. So there, what the facilitator would do is that facilitator would take all your past experiences, and he would make you write them down. He would make you relive them, and then he would make you yourself tear them up in an emotional tear up, so that you were able to start off completely afresh. So it was just like formatting the disk of your heart of all the pains that you had been through because of those parental tapes, and then be able to reprogram your heart or your mind, whatever you choose to call it, and so that you could progress afresh with life. So that's the kind of deep kind of work that can be done, and that's the kind of work that makes so much of a difference. So I think Sarika, you do work with people at a mental level, and you would most certainly understand the significance of this also, isn't it?
Yes, sir, very much. Catharsis, writing down, journaling, gratitude journaling, lot of strategies. Yes, you said it rightly. Thank you.
So in every catharsis, there is a katha. Storytelling is so powerful. Storytelling is not powerful just for people listening to it. It's powerful also for the people to tell that story, because you know for all mental health professionals, when the patient is able to tell their story, that really sorts out so many of the problems that the patients are going through. Okay, so we go back to the presentation.
Today we look at the story.
So we need to ultimately summarize it. Emotional wisdom is actually the key to real freedom of choice, which gets us to the ultimate wisdom. And this is the concept of emotional intelligence, which which I had referred to from the Vedantic perspective. So who am I? Who am I is a very important thing. First, we'll go through this quadrant, and then after that, we will get into the activity of who am I. Okay, so since the Ashwin will need to leave at 3 o'clock, we will complete this activity in Ashwin's presence, so that Ashwin is also able to benefit from the activity. Okay, so
Thank you, sir.
yeah, welcome. So we are looking at various different aspects we are looking at thinking, we are looking at doing, we are looking at being, and then we are looking at universal being. So thinking has to be conscious. Thinking should be positive. It should be adaptive, innovative. If you see, all these things somewhere are circling around the Daniel Goleman's model of self-regulation. Okay. Then gratitude is also an important thing. So if we are grateful, some of us maintain a gratitude journal. Then being mindful, we talked a lot about mindfulness. We talked about empathy. We talked about resilience. After that, we come to the thing of doing, because ultimately a person needs to be a karam yogi. Karam yogi is a person who actually performs tasks. And then we need to be in touch with the universe, where we understand the unity of being. Now, this brings us to the Vedantic perspective. The Vedantic perspective of who am I? So, Atma, see, Tma is darkness, Tamas is darkness. Atma is what is not darkness. Therefore, it means it is light. So Atma is the illumination that we experience within ourselves. Okay. So like they say, 1 hour of enlightenment is equal to a lifetime of worship. So Atma talks about who am I. It talks about the life purpose and the values. It talks about the belief and the worldview, and it talks about the strengths. Okay. So what we will do is we will again have these classrooms of 2 and 3, which is totally equal to the 5 of you all present. Sarika, you can slightly change the configuration so that people come across new people in that. Okay.
Yes,
So,
sir.
so in this, what I would like is, I would like each person to share with the other person who they are. Okay, now I leave it up to them whether they want to give more emphasis on the professional dimension, whether they want to give more emphasis on the one sec, Kalpana, professional dimension, or the personal dimension, or the spiritual dimension. Okay. One thing that is important is how well they are able to convey to the other person what they are. So we will necessarily need people to talk about somebody else who was in the room and not about themselves. Okay. So let's go for that again. Sarika, we'll do it for 10 minutes, and
Yeah.
then after that everybody can come back and share.
Yeah. Sir, I'm creating 3 rooms. I will join with Kalpana.
Okay, fine. So one sec. Am I in place as the?
Yeah.
I am.
You
No,
will
yeah.
still be
Yeah,
in the
because my
session.
screen is there. Yeah. Okay. ठीक है. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. You can do
So
that.
10 minutes I'm putting the.
Yeah. Okay.
Sir, I'll just enter that room 3 and then you will be in this session now. Okay.
Okay. Fine. Okay. Everyone's back?
Yes, looks like. Pratish.
Okay, so now what we'll do is that
I think, okay, yeah. Yeah, everybody's there. So.
everyone's back, no?
Yeah.
So let us understand from each person, let them describe what sense they have made of what their partner has spoken about themselves. So we'll first go with a room that contains Ashwin, so that then later at any point in time when Ashwin wants to leave, he is free to do so. Okay, so Ashwin and partner can first. Who was with Ashwin? Loy, I think. Huh?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So it was very enlightening having an interaction with Lois. So she was actually when I asked a question, who she identifies herself with. So the moment that motherly feeling of having 4 children and
Okay.
came out, and for having 4 children, because and she identifies herself the same way in the office also. Very few people do that, at least in my experience. People, the moment I ask them who they identify, they start tagging their professional part in it. So looking at that, so I feel that she brings all that motherly compassion into her office work, and she's a soft skills trainer. So I feel that virtue is really makes her one of the, I would say that can make her a really great trainer. So at a fundamental level, she's a mother, and she also practices a religion wherein she takes care of people, as a Catholic. So she comes across as a person, as a very caretaking person, as a mother, and also as a soft skills trainer.
Wow, wonderful, fantastic. So we greatly appreciate Loy for being what you have described, and we appreciate you also for having the generosity to say that. Great. So
Thank you.
yeah. So now let's hear from Loy. Yes, Loy is all smiles.
Yeah, I am. I think Ashwin again has been very kind with his words to describe me, and I had a very enlightening experience, and I also felt that there was a connect with a lot of ideas that Ashwin shared, especially the point where he spoke about energy. He spoke about where we are no more man and women, but it is about the energy that each person brings in. That is a point that has really got that spark. It really sparked a lot of thought in
Fantastic, very good.
Right? And he spoke about his role, as a husband, as a son, and how he fulfills those responsibilities as well. Right, and I felt that when I was speaking to him, the whole aspect of responsibility, that it has to be done, it has to be done well. Right, and I can imagine why everybody in the office comes to him and shares all the troubles they have.
So he's the go-to person in his office.
He's the go-to person in his office. So I can understand why that happens. Again, the persona of Ashwin really shows that yes, I'm here for a chat, and I can definitely help. So that is something that really stood out.
Okay,
yes.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Next room.
Thank you, Loy.
So I think Pratishtha and Anupama were in one room, no?
Yes.
Yes. So I'll start.
Yeah.
Okay. So Pratishtha started off right from where she was born to she was talking about where she was born, how she went on to, where she studied, how she grew up. A very surprising thing was at the age of 19, she has become an animal activist. So, someone, I mean, people wouldn't think of doing something like that at that age itself. And the fact that she mentioned that a lot of people used to reach out to her to understand, basically share their problems. And that was the main guiding light for her to realize that she wanted to do psychology, become a psychiatrist. So that's something that I gained. And I think the kind of person she is, she's an extrovert, enjoys being around with the people and friends. At least that's what she thought it was. And I think she's part of an extrovert and an introvert. So we had a lot of things in common also when we spoke about, but got to know a lot of interesting things about her.
Okay, I think sir got logged off. Let's give a minute or so for sir to rejoin.
Sure.
Sir is rejoining in a couple of minutes. He got some issue with the internet connection. So meanwhile, all of you are able to access the LMS and everything yesterday that Harshada ma'am showed, right?
Yeah, Sarika.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
I haven't yet tried Sarika because
Okay.
I was out yesterday and today not been able to do it, but I'll try doing it in the evening.
Okay, sure, sure. You can check it and please let us know if any challenges are there.
Sure.
This class recordings will also be uploaded on that same LMS portal. So you can go back and revisit if you want to.
Yeah, sorry, I got logged out.
Yes, sir. No problem.
Yeah, so you'll have to make me co-host again so that I can again start the screen sharing once everybody has spoken. So I had heard Loy and Ashwin in their exchange, and then after that we had gone to Anupama and Pratishta's room. So during my absence, what sharing has happened?
No, so we just we were waiting for you. So Anupama ma'am was done, and I think Pratishtha goes next.
Okay, fine. So, sorry for that interruption, people. Huh? So Pratishta, please, you go on, and then last will be you all, no? Sarika and Kalpana, you all were together, right? Yeah.
So, first of all, I'd like to thank Anupama for hearing me out, because I think once I started off, I went on a jibber jabber, and I mentioned this to her also, and I'd like to mention it here also, that once I actually started up talking about myself, I sort of had a flashback of all the good memories that I had. And therefore, I think I went on with a very stepwise no description of how I am or how my life has been.
Okay.
But when Anupama talked, she was very crisp and she was very brief with how her life has been. And no, in the process, like she also mentioned, we were able to identify quite a few values that are very similar for us. So Anupama is somebody who has been very independent since the past 23 years of her life. And she is somebody who also believes in the value of helping others, where of course charity begins at home. So she tends to spend a lot of time with her parents, which I think is absolutely important given how the times are today. So that is one thing about her. Also, one thing that was common for both of us again, and I think it will be common for everybody who's here, we are in some or the other sort of helping profession. So we have that underlying trait of people who want to be there for people.
Wonderful. Great observation there, Pratishta. I agree with you. Yes.
Right. Also, she is somebody who is extrovert on a professional front, but more of an introvert on the personal front. And I think like two things that I observed during the session we had yesterday as well as today. She seems to be somebody who tends to take initiative.
Okay.
Yeah, and she seems to be somebody who wishes to learn and grow as well. So, no, I'm sure she is somebody who wishes to grab onto opportunities when they come her way and utilize it in the best of way possible. So,
okay, great. So very good observations, Pratishta, and I would say very generous observations also. So a round of applause for what Anupama is, and also for you for stating it so beautifully. So now let's go on to the last pair of Sarika and Kalpana, and Kalpana, please feel free to share in Hindi, not an issue.
Yeah. So, sir, I'll go ahead because it was largely I was listening to Kalpana ma'am. And I will talk about her. And Kalpana ma'am, you please add if I miss anything, whether in Hindi, English, Marathi, whichever language you want. So because she was comfortable in Marathi, sir, I kind of let her talk in Marathi. And I'll just, for others' benefit, I'll convert it to English, what she is. So I'll just pick up the thread that Pratishtha said, right? I think all of us here have that helping aspect in our mind. And I have observed this in all our EI, NLP, and a lot of MML programs that, there is a common thread for all of us that we want to do something for the society. And same thing for Kalpana ma'am, basically. And I am a mother to the world. What about Loy, I think Ashwin said. It's the same thing for ma'am, and even like If all of you know Sadhguru from Isha Foundation, that is one of the basic principles we practice, that I am the mother to this world. So Kalpana ma'am has been a teacher for 11th and 12th standard physics subject across 4 districts in Western Maharashtra she has worked in, and she took a VRS. So while she was in college, she felt like, I'm doing so much, I'm doing a lot of things for students, I'm doing this and that. Those were the initial thoughts, but over the period, she realized that because the students are there, that's why I am what I am. I'm getting paid because the students are there. So she believed that, if student becomes a big person or a successful person, it's not my credit. It's what he or she is achieving on their own. But my purpose...
That's so humble and so generous of her.
Yeah. And my purpose is to make sure that, I actually at least create a good citizen of this country. That is my purpose for the students. So that's the aim she went on. And then over the period, she also started studying the psychology of these students, 11 to 12 students. She spent days and nights over the period. She got interested in the women problems, a lot of problems that women face in society from all ages, like child to the old age. And that's her passion. I could see that she really has a purpose now. And she says that, if she just looks at the face of a woman, she can tell that what problem that woman is going through, just looking at the face.
Wow.
And she has, over the period, she has worked days and nights to understand what kind of problems all ages of women have, what is the psychology behind it, how we can make them better and help them work on that things. And that is her mission, is what, and she is really passionate about when she's talking about it. She's already working with Ashwin sir from MML, and she's also small time doing coaching for few women, civil services.
Wow,
One woman from civil services, and she's spreading whatever she has got the knowledge. She's trying, her aim is to spread it to all women across wherever she is. So she believes that, if she keeps that knowledge with her, it is like, keeping it, it's of no use, it's a waste basically. So that is where her aim is. And she didn't speak anything about her self or family or anything, but this is the cause, I think.
Wow, these are wonderful values, and what I will definitely tell her is that in case she lives in Pune, I don't know where she lives, but if she lives in Pune, she must go and meet a lady called Sindhu Tai Sapkar.
Yeah, she must be knowing her. Kalpana,
Yes,
ma'am?
yes, I know Sindhu Tai Sapkar. I meet also with or speak with Sindhu Tai Sapkar.
Oh.
Okay. Very good.
Kalpana ma'am is in Karad, actually, Western Maharashtra, near
Satara. Yeah, Karad, I know Karad. Yes. Fantastic.
Thank you.
And so that's that. If she wants to share anything, she's also most welcome to share.
Yeah, I didn't speak anything about me as such, because this went
because
on
everybody knows about you, right?
So
okay,
not
now
really,
I want to know something from you, Sarika. Since since you spoke about this Isha Foundation, there was one thing which I always wondered: how Sadhguru is able to get so many people to volunteer. Okay, if you have paid employees running a big mega corporation and all that, it's not a difficult task. It's just you have to get some administrative stuff in place, but he has so many people to volunteer for him. So how does he manage to get as many as 3 million volunteers? So can you give us a little insight into the way he thinks and into the way he does things, so that we would also understand how we can bring benefit to humanity the way he is doing?
Okay, sir. So I think this is one of the topmost question he gets, that, how do you manage this? And he says that, my job is really difficult than the corporates, because in corporates, you have all well-educated, well-talented, well-skilled people whom you pay and they work for you. But I have to manage any type of volunteer, may or may not have skills, may or may not have the required expertise. but I have to manage all of them, or I work with them. I can't lay off the people.
Yes.
But in terms of getting, sir, I don't know if I can really talk about it, but it's all about I think he's very famous in youth because he talks very logical and practical things. So I have been following multiple spiritual gurus and Art of Living also. 10 years I was associated with Sri Ravi Shankar and Art of Living. So Sadhguru is very famous in youth for sure, because it's a very practical and logical answers he gives. Is very straightforward. That's where youth is finding him very appealing, is what I over the period discovered. In terms of volunteering, sir, I mean, I have been volunteer at multiple spiritual organizations. So it's all about, we do work, we spread the word, or we go to house, and it is like dropping your all inhibitions and spreading the word. People may or may not listen to you. They may or may not agree with you. They may say bad things also to you, question the dignity, doubt these gurus and all, because in India we have also some swamis which, in the name of this guru. But what these courses teach you is, how you drop inhibitions and just be open and connect with everybody around. So here also, when I was speaking with Kalpana ma'am, I was able to connect with so nicely and easily. And I always felt that law of attraction works. You attract those people with similar minds and similar thoughts and similar purpose in life. I think that's what happens with this volunteering organizations, because it just chain formation just goes on, and it's over the years. It's a lot of work that we all do. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So that's great. What we will do is that normally we would have taken a break at 3 o'clock, but if you all agree, we can finish this module and then take a break when the module gets over. Is that okay? Or would you like to break right now? I leave it totally in your hands.
Yeah, so I think Loy, Pratishtha, Ashwin, Anupama ma'am, Kalpana ma'am, you have to tell.
I think I'm a little bit torn because I like the idea that Milan sir also shared, we will finish it. But I'm thinking, like, would a 5-minute break help to probably to drink water or to reconnect, anything like that?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine.
Maybe we can take a break, sir, and continue.
Pardon me?
If Loy wants the break, so I think it's a good idea to take 10 minutes break and come
Yeah,
back.
we'll take a 10-minute break and come back. Sarika is also back. Great.
I'm back.
Okay, Anupama.
I am also back, sir.
Okay, good. So now, just to refresh you all, I'll give you all a little story, and it's a story with a spiritual message. Okay. So many years back, at the point of time that my dad was studying, this was an incident in the Jabalpur University hostel. So it was late at night, maybe it must have been 1:30 something. So my dad very much felt like having a cup of tea. So the students said that now near the hostel there's no tea man open at 1 o'clock. So 1:30, if you want to have tea, then you probably have to go to the station, which is a long way off from here. So my dad said, fine, if that be the case, then let's go to the station and let us have tea. So there was a boy called Rajneesh over there. So he told my dad. My dad was used to be called Chandu. So he said, 1:30 बजे रात को अगर इतना दूर जाना चाह रहे हो चाय पीने के लिए, तो चंदू तुम चाय को नहीं पी रहे हो, चाय तुमको पी रही है. So this boy Rajneesh had that bent of mind from a young age. So Rajneesh later became Acharya Rajneesh, then he became Bhagwan Rajneesh, and then later on he came to be called Osho. So he had shared a lot of things with my dad, and maybe dad used to share with me also. Maybe someday I would like to publish the untold wisdom of Osho.
So that is so great to know. You have such a close connection there. Wow.
Yeah.
Yesterday only in the speaking tree, there was an article of Osho, how children and parents about relationship, like how parents don't let hold of children and also that was interesting. I read him too.
Yeah. So the most important thing, Sarika, which you also told me just now, no, with Sadhguru you let go of your inhibitions. So Osho also never believed in any inhibitions. He did not believe in all this tapasya and tyag and all these things. He used to say that we should be able to live our life to the fullest, and we should be able to enjoy all the bounties that nature and providence has given us. So that's the thing.
Yeah, sir, totally agree. Yeah. I read him also a lot.
Okay.
So ultimately, sir, it's just one sentence. I don't want to take more time, but I realized that all these spiritual institutions are teaching, and irrespective of religion. I mean, whether it's any religion, like there is a, I forgot his name, Mohuddin Khan or that Maulana
Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti.
No, Maulana Wahiduddin Khan.
Okay. He is an author, no?
He's a spiritual guru as well. He just passed away in COVID at age of 100 or something. But whether it's Osho, Art of Living, ISKCON, Isha Foundation, or Loy will also say that, all the practices that Christianity has, or even that Vishen Lakhiani's mind.
Vishen Lakhiani, he's fantastic. Yeah.
But I over the period realized that everybody is actually talking same thing from our Bhagavad Gita or whatever it is. But my takeaways were same from all religion or all type of spiritual institutions or gurus.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. True. At one level, we are all united. So that's how it is. Okay, so let's get back to the presentation. Oh, that presentation seems to have slipped when I got logged out. So will you wait for a minute while I go and retrieve that presentation?
Yes, sir, sure.
I don't know how that got slipped out during the thing,
Sir, any challenge in PPT sharing?
No, I was just downloading the thing. Now it's got downloaded. Now I think in another 30 seconds you should be able to see the PPT. Sorry, huh?
No problem. I was just checking if I need to help anything.
Okay. So I'll go to screen share. It can be seen, no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, we.
Okay, okay. I have to add the sound also. One second. I'll just share the sound also. Okay. Slideshow from current slide. Okay, it's start from the beginning. Okay, so now what is basically left in this is the summary. We'll go through the summary, and then you can volunteer stuff on the summary, and then after that we will move on. Okay, so what Susan David says is that you can be emotionally intelligent but still lack emotional agility. So the only thing I would say is that it's a question of our being awakened to it. When we are emotionally intelligent, we have the potential for emotional agility. It's a question of being aware, and it's a question of being activated towards that. Then emotional resilience is not about winning the battle, it's the strength to power through the storm and accept failures. So like I'd given you those examples of the boxer Muhammad Ali, like I'd given you the example of the Bismarck. So that is what resilience is all about. And emotional wisdom says that we can have the real freedom of choice. And we talked also about Vedic wisdom. We did that exercise on who am I? So if there are any questions, you can definitely ask those. Otherwise, then we can go on to the next module.
We don't have, at least I don't have any questions.
Okay, fine. Because I think more or less everything has got answered, right? In the course of doing the third chapter.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, great. So now we come to some processes which are slightly more complex. So it's about managing emotions. It's about cognitive restructuring. So cognitive restructuring is where at an intellectual level, we look at structuring ourselves, then methods of distractions, and then finally relaxation, meditation, and mindfulness. Methods of distraction, I will touch upon the marshmallow experiment also again once, because there is a close correlation where that is concerned. So what are the learning outcomes that we are expecting from this? We are looking at internalizing the processes and techniques of managing emotions, cognitive restructuring, purposeful distractions, and mindful meditation. So we are starting on the working of the emotional well-being.
We human beings have got the ability of self-awareness. We can become aware of our emotions. We have got the ability for self-analysis. We can think, is this emotion beneficial for me or not? We have got the ability for self-determination. I will choose this emotion, I will not choose this emotion. No matter what the situation, we can choose our emotional response. These are the faculties that make us human. When we were little children, at that time, if we felt bad, if we felt unhappy, we always pointed fingers. As juveniles, it was all right. We were not feeling responsible for our emotions. Okay, you're a little child. But the problem is that half of humanity, or maybe even more than half, even after they grow up physically, emotionally they remain little children. Emotionally, they remain immature. And whenever they are feeling bad, they start playing the blame game. Who is at fault for my bad mood? Have you ever thought it could be yourself? Huh? Myself? Once, one grandfather was sleeping, and the children thought it's 1st of April. So they'll play a prank with him. They took Limburger cheese. This Limburger cheese is the most foul-smelling cheese in the world. And they applied it on his mustaches. So when grandfather woke up and he took a deep breath, he said, "Is there some dead animal in this room? Where is the stink coming from?" He checked the shelves and drawers and cupboards to find the dead lizard or mouse. There was none. He thought maybe it is coming from the living room. He went, looked around. There was no dead mouse or rabbit there either. He said, "The whole house is smelling. Is it coming from outside?" He walked out of the house and took a deep breath in again. He said, "The whole world is smelling." Now the whole world was not smelling. The only thing smelling was his own mustache. In the same way, when we say, "That is the mistake for my emotions," this thought is the mistake. This playing of blame game is the biggest fault. If we can just get rid of this, we will start progressing spiritually. Remember, our emotions is our responsibility. What does the word responsibility mean? Responsibility. The ability to respond. We human beings have got the ability of self-awareness. We can become aware of our emotions. We have got the ability for self-analysis. We can think, is this emotion beneficial for me or not? We have got the ability for self-determination. I will choose this emotion, I will not choose this emotion. These are the faculties that make us human. That means even if negative circumstances arise, we can choose the thoughts and feelings that we will harbor towards them. And the scriptures tell us, you control your mind. If you do, you will choose inspiring thoughts and ideas. And if you subjugate your responsibility over your mind, then you will feel harassed by the environment, and your own mind will become your worst enemy.
So now when we say that it is all a question of our perception, what is actually happening? I'll give you a parable for this. Okay, so there were two people who traveled to a new town, and there was a wise man sitting at the entrance of the town. So the first person asked the wise man, how are all the people in this town? So the wise man said, how were they in the town that you came from? So that person said that, oh, they were absolutely terrible. They were uncooperative. They were hostile. They used to call me names, and they were insufferable. So and then he asked, how are the people here? The wise man said that you'll find the people here also like that. Then the next person asked, how are the people in this town? So the wise man asked, how were they in the town that you came from? So he said, they were very cooperative, they were very kind, they were very supportive, they spoke well of me. So the wise man said, that's how you're going to find them over in this town also. So, it's all a question of what is within us. Once somebody asked a wise man, how do I know whether somebody is fond of me or somebody has positive feelings towards me? So the wise man told him, it's very simple. Look into your heart. Look into your heart, and if you have those feelings towards that person is also bound to have the same feelings towards you. So it's all a question of getting back whatever we give to the world, that is what comes back to us. And in managing emotions also, it's the same thing. It has been said, and I think it was Gandhiji who said that, be the change that you want to see in others. Whenever we try to change the world, we find it so difficult. However, when we change ourselves, then it makes a huge difference. Like, Ghalib, he said that मैल चेहरे पे था और मैं आईना पोंछता रहा, so when we get onto the path of self improvement, when we introspect, and when we bring about those quantum shifts within us, that is when we see the quantum shifts happening in the world outside also. So this is a slide that is really packed with wisdom, and I'm going to ask some specialists to help me out with the parts that they are good in. Like, I'll tell you, I will most certainly volunteer for item number 5, where I will talk about certain supplements and diet and all that, as I'm very focused towards health. And after I run through this entire gamut, before I talk about supplements and diet, I would like people to volunteer, and would like them to talk about things which are their area of specialty. Some people are very good in yogic practices. Some people are very good in techniques. Some people maybe those who work in the psychology domain, they're very good at understanding emotional needs, that kind of a thing. Okay. So first I'll run through these. So you are responsible for your emotions. So there is a thing called internal locus of control. There is a thing called external locus of control. Where do we see external locus of control the most? We see external locus of control in a big way as far as social media is concerned. Whenever we post, whether we are posting on FB or we are posting on LinkedIn, we all the time want to see those reactions and comments, and we judge the worth of our post also based on the reactions and comments. So that controls our happiness. Also, another thing that controls our happiness is the factor of envy. Okay, so therefore, or very often on Facebook, the prevailing philosophy is my life is cooler than yours. So people want to always keep posting fantastic events that they've been to, great stuff that has happened to them in their life. So if you judge by the posts of FB, people have an abundance of wealth. People are constantly traveling to exotic locations. People are constantly checking into exotic hotels, eating exotic food and all that. Now, how true all that is, I don't know. But thing is that when someone doesn't have an internal locus of control, when they have an external locus of control, the happiness definitely gets affected. Then we have seen about emotional agility, emotional resilience. I really don't want to now dwell more on that. We have had a look at that. Then in terms of understanding emotional needs, so behavioral profile, we I think yesterday we touched upon DISC. So DISC is a fantastic instrument because there's years of research that has gone into DISC, and the biggest learning from DISC is that there is no right or wrong kind of behavior. So there are just different kinds of behavior, and we need to be able to relate to people by understanding what behavioral profile they come from. So for example, if a person is a very dominating kind of a person, it doesn't mean that the person means ill or the person wants to bully us or something like that. It's just that it's a part of their nature. They want to be in charge. They want things to happen immediately. Similarly, if somebody is a C profile, they're very, very clued on to the different kinds of processes. They're great sticklers for those kind of processes. It doesn't mean that they want to be an obstacle to you. It doesn't mean that they want to put hurdles in your path, but that is, just the way that they are. Okay, so then we need to know our triggers. There are certain hot buttons that each of us have. You know what is called duktiness. So we need to understand how to choose our response. Then again, we talked about those hormones: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. Those are, of course, fantastic hormones. We don't have to worry about that. Keep doing good stuff and they'll keep coming. However, we have to worry about norepinephrine. We have to worry about cortisol, which actually can cause a lot of damage. Then when we look at yogic practices, if you ask me, I think have been substantially underutilized. Things like pranayam are very, very good in building immunity. And if people practice pranayam much more, I think the incidence of illnesses would substantially reduce. And yes, I see Sarika agreeing with me. Then focusing on breath. Okay, there was an uncle that I had who told me a superb thing, and I realized how true this is. He says, "You want to be healthy?" I said, "Yeah, of course, I want to be healthy." He said, "Just take care of one thing." He said, "Breathe properly." He said, very few people really breathe properly. So, there's a breathing that people do from the top of the chest. There's a breathing that people do from the middle of the chest, and there's a breathing that people do right from the bottom, and almost it seems to come from their stomach. So the deeper we breathe and the lesser number of breaths we take, the healthier that we will always be. And focusing on our breath is a fantastic way of getting ready for meditation. And then we need to do mindfulness meditation. Supplements and diets, I will not talk about right now. When I come to volunteering my part, that time I will talk about the supplements and diets at length. And there are the techniques of 4-square breathing, physical activity, shifting our focus, physiology, and environment. Okay, great. So now this 6-step process of MML, which we have seen of managing emotions, that's a very comprehensive, a very scientific, and a great process. Now, who would like to take up any of the sections that are mentioned over here in these processes. Would you like to take up yogic practices, Sarika? Share a little, share your perspective on whatever you know about yoga, meditation, pranayam, how it is helpful. So let this be a completely co-learning thing. Please, whoever is present right now in the forum, do share about whatever you know about these things. Yes, Sarika.
Yeah, sure. Okay, can you hear me all properly?
Yeah. We can hear you. We can hear you.
So I probably can talk about my experience and exactly same thing what sir you said, right? We don't breathe properly, and that's where a lot of problems. The basic thing is we know that, you know, if our brain doesn't get oxygen for even few seconds or a thing, it is going to suffer problems immediately, right? So that is where breathing plays a very big role actually. As you said, breathing from upper lungs or from the lungs or the end of the stomach almost. The stronger or the deeper and the longer the breaths, our health is going to be amazing. So same thing with our brain, because brain, when there is a lack of oxygen supply, our thinking is again harmed, right? It gets
absolutely. Yes.
It gets affected. That's where this pranayama and breathing practices play a very good role. And I personally have really seen tremendous benefits in terms of my brain, my anger issues, and staying calm in a lot of situations, reducing the stress and tension. And also, and all of these are definitely connected with our emotions and emotional intelligence. So yoga is actually, as you all know, probably is the union of body and mind and soul and breath and all. Everything is a one thing. We think that it's only exercises and all, but it is not that. And of course, the food practices will also come into yogic practices. And mindfulness meditation, I have mainly been practicing the guided meditations. There are a lot of meditations, but recently for past few years, I'm doing Chit Shakti meditations, which are more like success oriented, happiness, health oriented. Same thing for mindfulness meditation also, you know, there are a lot of benefits. Actually, whoever is not doing should just practice and see. It is more about experiencing than talking things is what I feel. So that's what I can add. Thank you.
Okay.
Even like, you know, when you are very angry and just losing control, simply if you just close eyes and take deep breaths and just concentrate for 4-5 seconds, that itself gives a big relief, and that emotional hijack, amygdala hijack is in control. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah, most welcome. So as far as supplements and diets are concerned, I'll first make one statement which many may think to be very unconventional. However, I will still state it because I think it's very right. The quintessential balanced diet is the Indian thali. If you see the Indian thali, it has got everything. It has got greens, and it has got pulses, and it has got fiber, and it has got protein, and it's got everything. So when we talk about this sattvic diet, we talk about whole food. That is something so phenomenal. But all this sattvic and whole food and all has been put to the side, and now you see pav bhaji, and you see vada pav, and you see pizza, and you see burgers, and God knows what all. So I think there is a need for us to go back to our roots. There is a need for us to go back to nature. That there is a need to really have proper whole food, and we need to be able to cut out on all the kind of sugary stuff that we are having. We need to be able to cut out on the overload of stimulants that we always keep seeming to take. And very importantly, we need to have proper exercise so that everything can be metabolized properly. And like that uncle had talked about breath being a panacea, I want to suggest adequate sleep as a fantastic health measure. I believe that if we get good sleep, firstly, our body gets rested. That is one, because we definitely need to have rest. The second is that when we are in a deep state of sleep, especially when we are in the theta state, the kind of healing that happens is phenomenal. Please test it out sometime. If you have a stomach ache, you have a toothache, or you have any kind of a wound also, just sleep it off to the extent that it's possible. I mean, everybody has work and all to do, so it's not possible to cast aside everything and just sleep. But get as much sleep as you can, and you will be amazed by the kind of healing that that sleep is giving you. And especially if you're able to get sleep in that theta state. Then thinking. Now, a fantastic thing about our brain is that our brain is never at rest. Even when we are sleeping, our unconscious brain is working phenomenally. And if we are actually able to program it, like often they say, let me sleep over it. And people sleep over an issue, and in the morning, suddenly they have an epiphany, they have that aha experience. And suddenly this things click, and so many of us must have also experienced it. Things work out. So I would say that sleep is quite a panacea. Okay, just like breath is also a panacea. Breath, mindfulness, sleep, these are all things that we are losing out in the long run. So when there's the pressure of work, people skip lunch, people skip dinner, people sleep late. What people don't realize is that the body is completely ruthless. The body wants its due, and the body will take its due in any way that it wants to. So you may skip out on a meal, but the body will complain in a way that will compel you to eat. You may skip out on sleep, but the body will make you sleep. So why resist? What they say is, what you resist persists, what you accept dissolves. So let us go with the flow. Let us be natural, and then I think that'll be absolutely fine. Yeah. So folks, you all heard from Sarika about yoga. You heard from me about supplements and diet. Let's hear your areas of expertise also. Yeah, Pratishta?
Okay, there's a recoil in my voice now. I can hear an echo.
But we can hear you properly.
We can hear you properly. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay, so I think out of these 6 areas, it's for me. It's
you want me to go back to that slide to be able to recall what those areas are?
That would help. So, like, it's difficult for me to put them under these specific categories, because that's typically how the flow of our sessions looks like in therapy.
Okay.
So, yeah, you were saying.
So give us a little insight, Pratishta, as to how therapy happens, because I mean we've got fantastic exposure to how training happens. We have fantastic exposure to how coaching happens, but we would like to hear something about therapy. Tell us about therapy.
Sure, sir. So in therapy, like, of course, because it's talk therapy, we get the person to talk a lot about what is it that's going on. And it's always like, this is a researched fact. The more you talk about a concern towards resolution, the better integration of the problem happens.
Okay, great.
So that's where we start at in therapy, identifying what is the person looking to work on. So mostly people identify behaviors as problems. That no, I have been smoking a lot, or I tend to get angry a lot, or I don't feel like doing anything. So for us, not for us, I wouldn't generalize it for all, but then the way I work is, of course, because behaviors are absolutely visible. Therefore, it's easier for a person to identify that, okay, this is something that has been bothering me. And that is when we start working inwards. Like when yesterday we spoke about REBT.
Yeah.
We spoke about the consequence, the emotional consequence, and behavior is a manifestation of the emotional consequence.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Right. So therefore, this second head that comes here, identify your emotional needs. Right. We try to understand what is a behavior trying to tell you. What is the emotion that you're acting on, which is leading to this particular behavior. Once we've understood what is the emotion, once we are able to name it, then we understand what is the emotion trying to tell you now. Like, what's the purpose of that emotion? Like anger and fear can come as defense mechanisms.
Absolutely, yes.
Right. Anxiety also, for that matter, comes to protect us from something that we are really scared of, either in the future or something that has happened to us in the past.
Correct.
Right. So therefore, understanding what is it that you need emotionally, what has led you to believe that no, you would not get it, or there would be a lack of it. Identifying triggers, because no, these are certain things that can be noticed in the environment, that okay, when have I reacted in similar ways. So chalking that out, identifying that okay, maybe a specific tone, maybe a specific smell, or no, certain words. What is it that triggers me, basically?
Correct.
Once we're able to identify the triggers, like it's written, choosing how we wish to respond, because we cannot change the triggers, but we can always choose to respond in a different manner.
Absolutely. That choice is always there with us. Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So this helps bring a person from an external locus of control to a more internal locus of control.
Fantastic. Pratishtha, I want to ask you one question.
Yes, sir.
A lot of issues that people have, even in their adult age, is because of many things that did not get a closure during a younger age.
Right.
So what is it that really prevents people from getting closures? Why are people not able to close issues, and why do they keep remaining open, and then why do they keep recurring as festering wounds, or different kind of schemas that play out in their minds?
Okay, so something that I've often noticed is like, of course, as children, the difficulty with our culture is expression is not taught as an option. We are often told chup raho, ya phir it's like if a child tries asking a question, the child is told they are being naughty, or no, they are trying to question authority. So somewhere बहुत ही uncertainty में a child is left. They don't. So whatever meaning making happens with a child, the child has to do it all by himself or herself. Now it could be from movies, it could be from what they see and observe in the environment. Okay, this is how my parents are, or this is what people tend to mean when they are saying a certain thing.
Right. Absolutely.
So, for a child, like I have had clients who said that both my parents were working, and it meant two completely different things for two different children. For one, it became trauma because it was like I was constantly abandoned. Now the child made meaning that I am not good enough, or they do not love me enough. For a child, it's difficult to blame the parents. Like this is something that even Freud, like though Freud said that it's all the mother's fault, but somewhere along the line, we do understand that it's difficult for a child to accept the fact that my parents could have been wrong. So therefore, the child tends to internalize everything, that it's all my fault. But we observe adults behaving otherwise and saying that no, सामने वाले की गलती है.
Yeah. In fact, I'll share with you, Pratishtha. In fact, I'll share with everybody over here that I did function for quite some time as an advisor to a parenting group. Later, I had time constraints, so I could not, unfortunately, continue with that. My observation very often had been that more than the children, so often it is the parents who need the counseling. I don't know what you think about that, Pratishtha, but that's what I felt.
Yes, absolutely, sir. So, like even when I was into training, at that time, I would have more of these parenting sessions because sometimes, in fact, often for children, you have to, if the environment is if the environment is good enough, the child will anyhow grow properly. But
Correct.
if the environment in itself is very confusing, the child will find it difficult to do the meaning making process in a healthy fashion.
Correct. Yes.
So therefore, educating parents that way helps because at the end, they are the immediate environment for the child.
Absolutely. And, again, to sort of consolidate this thing about this 6-step process to manage emotions, I think one huge challenge that is being faced by the emerging generation at an emotional level is the fact that the way the parents of many children have brought them up is given them a sense of entitlement and also created a state of dependency, because the parents they don't manage to give sufficient time to the children, and then they compensate it by giving them expensive gifts and giving them a lot of money and stuff like that. And so the child begins to feel that it can get whatever it demands, and unfortunately in the real world it doesn't happen that way. So I don't know if you would have experienced something like that.
I do, sir. In fact, recently me and my colleague, we were discussing how come children these days are so narcissistic. Because I think when we were younger, we had absolutely no courage to speak up in front of our parents saying that no, what you are doing is wrong, ya nahi aap galat ho, and things like that when we were as young as 5 to 6.
Correct.
Or we did not even have the guts to throw a tantrum in front of the parents because we knew we would get slapped or shunned in a corner.
Absolutely.
So it's like we've been working in two extremes. At one point, it was like punishment was used often. Right now, I think parents aren't taking reinforcement and rewards in a they are overdoing that as well.
Yeah, and it's to an extent also it is a rub off of the Western cultures where there is a lot of individualism that is promoted, and there are legislations actually which protect children, and in the US, if a parent is too strict, the child turns around and tells the parent that if you pile on to me too much, I'll report you for abuse, and there is stuff like that which happens. So which again brings me back to the thing which when we look at the MML values and we look at the Vedic system and we look at ancient Indian culture and all, I think we need to come back to our roots. So that is what MML is saying, that is what I believe in also, and that is what the Vedas are also pointing towards. So that's that. Okay, great then. We did do a lot of reflection, so we can move off from the reflection. We move on to cognitive restructuring. Doesn't that sound like a very fancy term? Cognitive restructuring. I would translate it into our terms and say it's changing the way we think. The psychologists are the people who will talk about cognitive restructuring. The neurologists will talk about cognitive restructuring. At my level, I'll just call it changing the way I think. So it takes time, it takes patience and hard work, but at the same time, it provides us an opportunity to be much healthier and happier if we continue to practice it. Here, I would recommend, when we talk of mindset, I would recommend a book called Mindset. That's by Dr. Carol Dweck. So there, she has emphasized one thing very beautifully. What happens is that when there is a fixed mindset, people are already telling children that they are born talented, okay, that they are born smart, they are born intelligent, they are born superior. That has a very unhealthy effect on the mind of the child, because it either creates arrogance or it creates performance anxiety, neither of which are actually healthy things to have. So a growth mindset always appreciates the processes. A growth mindset always appreciates what is the progress that is being made. So we need to move from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. So that is the way forward, really, where we will be able to develop the emerging generation. So we did speak a lot about the locus of control. We talked about social comparison also, where we were discussing FB, and we were talking about how people assign their own state of happiness, and that they assign their own sense of self-worth based on the kind of posts that other people are making, the kind of updates that people are making, sorry. So there is cognitive interpretation, this cognitive appraisal, and based on all this cognitive restructuring, where we do essentially, how do you translate this? Reappraising a stressor via cognitive behavioral therapy. It is basically, if we look at in NLP terms, it's an act of reframing that we're doing. So when we are reappraising a stressor, we are actually reframing our perspective on the whole thing. So these are various different situations that we have, okay? Small little things which really are very innocuous and which may not actually be significant or even be real, those begin to affect us. The slightest change in the tonality of people when they talk to us, people seeming to sometimes ignore us, and I'll give you an example. So there was somebody who reacted to an update that I made, and then that person got in touch with me and said that you did not respond to my reaction. I said, like, can you tell me what happened? So they said, ki, you gave a response to the people before me, you gave a response to the people after me, but you did not give any response to me. So then I had to explain to them how it is on FB, that all the comments do not appear. There is a certain scrolling that happens, and sometimes if you do not press on the view more comments, you might possibly miss out. You might possibly miss out on a comment that a particular person may have made. So you know that's how these misunderstandings come about. So when you look at this chart tells you about actual feelings that we get, and it tells you about the alternative approaches that can be used for that. So when somebody goes without saying hello, actually we start thinking, where did I go wrong? Is that person mad at me? Is it that that person dislikes me? The alternative approach is that, look at it in a different perspective. Maybe she had a lot on her mind, and maybe she didn't even notice me, and that's something which actually is a fact. then we feel hurt, we feel sad, we feel anxious. Actually, we should just be able to let go. Letting go are two magic words. When we let go, we really get a lot. It's paradoxical, but when you let go, you get. So there is a spiral of overthinking. We went to another co-worker and said, look how this person is behaving. Better than that is continue with your day. Don't give it a second thought and say hello the next time that you see that person. You will find a world of difference. I'm telling you, relationship building is not just about the positive efforts that we make. Relationship building is also a lot about, at times, ignoring what we think is negative. It's about letting go, because then people also see us as mature people. People also see us as generous people. And therefore, this perceived maturity, this perceived generosity, that works for us in our favor. So on the Excel sheet, you must have seen this command, which is find and replace, or edit and replace. So similarly, we have this. There are times we feel that everything is going negative for us. So that's why we say, I can't believe that I've been diagnosed with. Now that with could be anything. It could be a heart condition, it could be diabetes, it could be cancer, it could be anything. Then if we look at it in the way that this is a wake-up call, this is a wake-up call for us to be able to actually improve our overall health, then we are on the right track. Sometimes we get overawed by the financial situations that we find ourselves in. That is a wake-up call for us to do some serious financial rethinking for ourselves. So when we do this financial rethinking for ourselves, then we feel much better. Then we envy people for being a phenomenal success by being focused. So that is a wake-up call for us to be focused. So there are n number of situations where there is a particular way that we are looking at things, and if we are able to replace that way that we are looking at things, then we are in a much better position. So some great stuff on CBT. Let's listen to this.
So, for example, one of my patients came in and he said, "Doctor, I'm so depressed, I think I want to kill myself." And I said, "Why is that?" And he says, "Well, I'm just a total failure." And I said, "What way are you a total failure?" And he said, "Well, I'm a failure as a husband, as a parent, as a business person, as a homekeeper, as a home supporter, and so on." So I could have, at that level, just talked about his sense of helplessness and failure. But I wanted to get more information. So instead of addressing helplessness, which seems to be across the board there, or the sense of failure, or the sense of frustration, I started taking each of these components in order, keeping in mind that the overall meaning of what he said did have to do with failure, right? It's pretty clear that his belief, "I am a failure," had just grabbed hold of him and now was playing out in every aspect of his life. So I asked, well, first of all, you said you're a failure as a husband. So what's happened recently that gave you that thought? He says, well, when my wife went off for work today, she didn't say goodbye. And I said, well, so what does that mean to you? And he says, well, it means she doesn't love me. I said, why is that? He said, because she always says goodbye, but now she must be ticked off and she doesn't love me, and somehow, I don't know what, but there's something about me that turns her off. So I said, okay. So then I kept going on. So I said, now what makes you think that you're a failure as a father? And he says, well, because the kids all were fighting this morning. So I said, okay. And I said, what makes you think that you're a failure as a businessman and a provider? And he said, because I just looked at the budget report and we're going to go in debt for the next 3 months. And then finally I said, well, what about your failure as a homekeeper? And he said, well, the roof is caving in the house. So here we could have just dealt with the common denominator. The meaning is he's a failure in each of these things, and could have talked about the failure. But then I broke it up into each compartment. And this is what we wouldn't have done as a psychoanalyst. Psychoanalyst, we would have looked for an unconscious meaning, or might be for the conscious meaning. But we break this up into the different pieces. So I then asked him, what about your wife running off? I said, do you remember anything that happened prior to her running off? And he said, well, she was very rushed at breakfast. And I said, yeah, do you remember any conversation that you had? And he said, well, I guess she told me she had a very important meeting coming up. And I said, oh. And what else did she say? And she said, oh, she said she was late for the meeting. And I said, oh, well, is it possible that the reason she rushed off without saying goodbye was that she was in a hurry? And he says, you know, that does make sense. So then I asked him, what about your teenagers fighting all the time? And he said, yeah, it's terrible. I just can't seem to control them. And I said, well, what about the other kids in the neighborhood? Are they all very quiet and they all get along? And he said, yeah, you know, I guess teenagers do fight. And then I asked him, what about the business? He says, well, you know, we're going to run a deficit next year, or next semester. And I said, but I know you're in the clothing business. I understand you run through cycles. And you run through the cycle where you're making more money than you're spending, and then you run through another cycle where you're spending more money, you're manufacturing the dresses, and then you make up for it the next trimester when you start selling the dress. He said, yeah, I guess you're right. So then I said, well, now what about the roof caving in? And he says, well, the roof was leaking. And I said, yes. And he says, well, it's caving in. So I said, well, what do people do when the roof is leaking? And he says, well, I don't know. I said, well, what did you do in the past when you had problems with the roof? He said, oh, I called the roofer. So I said, well, isn't that a job for the roofer? And he said, yeah, you might be right.
So we often tend to catastrophize things. Okay, so in psychology, there's a concept called catastrophizing, where even when there are small issues, we make them up into big things. So when you really look at it, you realize that very often we tend to make mountains out of molehills. So therefore, if we are able to look at things in a more rational perspective, then we will be able to arrive at much more rational decisions also. So anyone from the psychology space wants to comment on CBT, this particular thing? What is your experience about CBT? Pratishtha.
Yes, sir. So, like you spoke about, like catastrophizing is one, but there are many such irrational thoughts or no. In CBT, like in REBT, it's called irrational thoughts, but in CBT, it's called thought distortions.
Okay. Okay.
So if anybody wants to know more on that, they can just read out the on Google. You will type thought distortions in CBT. They'll give you a good list, and that helps us understand if we generally do practice certain distorted thoughts in our day-to-day functioning as well. So
Okay.
like all or none thinking. If I do this, I'm the best, or I'm a complete failure, or no, like catastrophizing is one. Also, no, so there are n number of these particular distortions, and looking at them can actually help us segregate what is not healthy for us and what will be, like what can be an alternate approach to it.
So I think Gail has also listed a lot of disorders, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So I want to just share with the group neuroscience perspective on some of these things as to the irrational fears and anxieties. See, the thing is, there is a signal that goes from the neocortex to the amygdala, and there is also a signal that goes from the amygdala to the neocortex. However, the signal from the amygdala to the neocortex is much stronger than the signal from the neocortex to the amygdala. Therefore, very often, even when we know at a rational level that certain things should not worry us, at an emotional level, we continue to be anxious about those things. We continue to be stressed about those things. Very often, even when our rational mind is telling us something to the contrary, our emotional mind is refusing to accept it. And that is why this kind of irrational thinking also happens. Okay. Yeah, Anupama, you want to say something? You've raised your hand.
Yes. So, I come from a profession, a lawyer. Most of the time, we are taught to look at the worst case scenarios, the worst that can happen in a case. And basis that we give an advice. So even if there are two people who are contracting, who trust each other a lot, we tell them to think of what can happen if the situation goes bad between them, to think of those situations and cover that in the relationship. So, this is kind of a conflict for me because I've tuned myself all these years to look at the worst case scenario. And then we are now, this is of course of interest to me. What I'm trying to tell you is to come out of a situation where professionally I have to look at things which can always go wrong. I'm only supposed to see what can go wrong and not what can go right. Because technically when you get into something, it should go right. But we have to make a document or give an advice based on what can go wrong. And then here is a real life process where we are getting in and trying to see how we can leave all that behind and train the mind once again to look at how I can reframe and how I can change my behavior to looking at the what can be the best.
Correct. So actually, Anupama, your point is valid, because no matter how positively we look at it and how rationally we look at it, if we are to consider things from a legal standpoint or a legal perspective, then always the worst case situations also have to be taken in mind. However, that is just a contingency and a safeguard, and it does not necessarily imply that the signatories are of that mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, most of the situations, in fact, I face, when we tell them to look into something, the first thing they come up with is, we trust each other, we know each other. But when it comes to law, we leave trust behind, we leave everything else behind. It becomes paper and document that becomes more important than the actual relationship or the emotions that people share. So I was just thinking when, I was looking at reframing and all that, it will be a total reframing for someone, because I think it's a natural thing that for years you keep applying something in your professional field, slowly starts slipping into your life where you are extra cautious in everything that you see that intention behind it. And I think somewhere down the line, because when most, like, I had a friend who basically trusted a I think mason who was to construct a house.
Okay.
And I was involved in it because it's a trust related activity. And I came to know from somewhere he was not, he had not completed work somewhere. So I told him, don't pay an advance. But he went ahead, and I basically gave him, I said, this is not the right thing to do. You do not know what can happen. After that, he didn't keep me posted. Till around 6 months back, he came back to me to tell me that guy has taken him for a ride and taken the money, not done the job. So I had to get involved, file a police complaint, then, go and get another contractor to complete the work. So, there again, it starts kind of reinforcing your belief that you need to be extremely cautious and you can't just follow the thing. So that becomes a part and parcel of your thing.
Got it. Yeah, because see, ultimately we are whole human beings. It's not as if, we can so neatly partition and compartmentalize ourselves and say, this is me as a lawyer, and this is me as a spouse, and this is me as a parent. No, everything, the distinctions get blurred, things overlap, and most certainly this kind of thing does happen. So, which is why the need for doing a personal inventory on a regular basis, which is why the need for regular introspection, which is why the need for reframing. So I think that is what is the relevance of all these things, isn't it?
Right.
Okay. So here again we have these different processes which are happening, where we're talking about emotions, we are talking about perspectives, we're talking about stories. Stories is very important. We'll come to stories. We're talking about our purpose, our behavior, our attitude. So my emotions basically is all about self-awareness. Okay, so if I were to succinctly put it, my emotions is about self-awareness. My perspective is like, in emotional agility, stepping out. This stepping out thing, or even if you look at the 90 seconds reflection, what is the 90-second reflection? For those 6 seconds that the hormones are triggered in our systems, their impact lasts for 90 seconds, and then we need to see whether we want to stay with that or we want to do away with it. Then, as far as my stories is concerned, we will come to that. Reframing is a very important part of my stories. My purpose, of course, we have to see in terms of how significant anything really is. Okay, so there is a series of books. There's a series of books called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. So it says, don't sweat the small stuff with family, don't sweat the small stuff at work. And there's one called Just Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. Basically, what Don't Sweat the Small Stuff says is that a lot of the things are really not as significant as we believe them to be. If there's any particular incident that happens in our lives, we find that within a few days it loses its importance. Within months, it becomes hardly a blur of a memory, and over a period of years, it absolutely matters nothing. So therefore, small event versus big life is a thing. So I just consider this maxim. It says that till we are 20, we really worry a lot about what others think about us. When we reach 40, we are not really that bothered about how much people think about us. And when we reach 60, we realize that they were not thinking about us at all. So, you know, very often we think, what will this person say? What is this person thinking about me? The reality is they have other fish to fry. So they're really not as concerned about us as we think. So if we just chill, life will be a lot happier. And if we genuinely become as happy as we show ourselves to be on social media, then we'll really feel good. Then when we talk about our values, our strengths, our long-term goals, so that is what is important. Uh, Strengths finder approach is a great approach which Gallup has started. Also, another great strengths finder is a concept called appreciative inquiry. So, appreciative inquiry is very closely related to emotional intelligence, and it's something that highlights on all the positive stuff that's happening and all the strength. Then my behavior is the acceptance of self and others, and also the fact that none of us is really perfect. In fact, perfection is something which, if we strive for, it is so stressful. It is so stressful. I can't even tell you about it. So then I flex my behavior. You know, then finally we come to the thing of attitude, where we cannot make everybody happy, but we can surely include others in our happiness. And then ultimately, everything is temporary, everything is Maya. So we need to be centered, we need to be grounded, and we need to take all these things in our stride. Okay, so this is the reflection icon. I'll go back to this so that you can have a look at the screen, and any reflections that you wish to share, please do. Before that, I'll just share a little about stories. Okay. So, storytelling has been a very standard way by which we have narrated facts and by which we have documented events. So, we have a subject called history. Now, what is history? History is his story. Okay. So, the history is also ultimately a story. And storytelling has emerged as the most powerful means of communication, and the corporate world is also adopting storytelling in a big way. And most certainly, I'm going to be exploring the power of storytelling so that I can further augment my evangelism of emotional intelligence. So that is my small little contribution towards perspectives on this particular slide that you're having a look at. Anybody else would like to share anything with respect to what they see on this slide? We've not heard Loy from some time. Huh, Loy?
Yes, sir.
So, Loy, your attitude is very positive. So, can we request you for some perspective on my attitude?
Okay, I think that's yeah, okay. My attitude, I think, is something that I've built over the years. Because I was not this positive. In fact, I think when Anupama was talking about her profession of speaking about, prepare for the worst.
Okay.
And it is that moment that I recollected that I was brought up like that. My parents were like, prepare for the worst.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
There could be a situation where things can go wrong. So prepare for
Okay. Okay. Okay.
but then it took many years for me to transform that. And like it is said here, no, I can't make everyone happy, but I include others in my happiness. So that is something that I really tried doing to change my mindset, to be agnostic of the situation that I am in.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also agree. And the whole aspect of perspective that you have shared here, detaching and observing emotions from a third perspective, it's something I've practiced, and I have seen that it brings great result. It takes time to do that, to sort of imagine that you are the third person listening to yourself speaking or behaving in a certain way. And I think the 90-second reflection is something that is also something that has touched. One other aspect that you shared, which I connected with, was where you said the neocortex sends signal to the amygdala and the vice versa. But the amygdala signals are more stronger to the neocortex.
Absolutely. Yes.
This is something I have experienced. Well, logically, I know it won't go wrong. Something will not. Things will be okay, but still, I feel the sense of worry. Oneness in me. So
correct.
You've answered a very long-awaited question that I had in me. So, yeah, I think that is where I will stop.
Okay. Fantastic. So let me tell you, since we talk about spirituality and we talk about religion and all that, I picked up a very beautiful perspective from a book called Jesus CEO. Okay, so what the author is a person called Laurie Beth Jones. So what she has said is that look at the team of 12 apostles that Jesus had. Even that was not a perfectly functioning team. Okay, so there was one who doubted him. There was one who denied him, and there was one who betrayed him. So even with only a 75% fully functional team, look at the fantastic impact that he had on the world. So I personally found that a very, very inspiring perspective,
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, sir. I think when you said that, one other thought that struck me is that though Judas betrayed Jesus, Judas's attitude was to betray Jesus. It did not affect the attitude of the other apostles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So for the others, they looked at the positive.
Correct.
What they can do for the world.
Correct.
So that's also like a positive attitude the other apostles maintained.
Yeah.
But our purpose is different.
Yeah. So which shows, Loy, how value-centered they were,
Yeah.
So that is a fantastic lesson for us to learn. Yes. Okay, so that's that on this slide. This is the reflection. Now we talk of the methods of distractions. When we talk of distractions, I want to talk to you all about the marshmallow experiment. Can you tell me why I want to correlate distraction with the marshmallow experiment? We all know the marshmallow experiment. No, we went through it yesterday, right? Does anyone recall the marshmallow experiment? I see Loy putting a thumbs up and I see Sarika smiling. Okay, so what is the connection of distraction and the marshmallow experiment? Okay, let me decode it for you. Those children, if 20 minutes they had to stay without eating that marshmallow, they had to have something fascinating to distract them. So in many narrations of the marshmallow experiment, we may not go into that. However, here, since we have the good fortune of having the methods of distraction, the children were able to keep themselves suitably occupied. They were able to keep themselves suitably occupied so that they did not have to give in to the temptation. So one thing, let us bear in mind, whenever we want to resist a temptation, the saying goes, what you resist persists, what you accept dissolves. So don't resist the temptation, just get distracted from the temptation. Make yourself forget that the temptation exists. or tell yourself that there's something more beautiful than the temptation, and we want to go over towards that something more beautiful, so that for the time being we can forget that temptation. So which is why the methods of distraction. So distraction is anything that you do temporarily to take your attention away from a strong emotion. So it's not about trying to escape. We know that we will eventually return to whatever feeling we were having. The thing is that when we go away from it, the intensity gets reduced. So therefore, the craving that we have to do that gets reduced. You know, when sometimes you want to set up a call with somebody, you want to set up a meeting with somebody, when they defer it, we find that eventually that meeting or that call may not even materialize. Why? Because then things fizzle out. The tempo of it dies down. So similarly, when we do a distraction, the tempo of the whole distraction, of the whole attraction, dies down because of the distraction. And so that is why it is helpful for us. So these are some techniques. Counting backwards from 90. Okay, counting backwards from 90 is a great thing. Let me ask you a question. Suppose you have to cumulatively add the numbers from 0 to 100. Okay, so 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5. If you cumulatively add them, how much will it come to? Have you ever done an addition of all the numbers from 0 to 100 and how much it comes to? Okay, I'll give you the answer. The answer is 5050. How long did I take to calculate that? Do you know? Take a guess.
If you didn't sit only on that and you were doing something else as a method of counting backwards, then maybe at least 3-4 hours.
There is a method. It only took me a few seconds to calculate. See, I'll tell you how you do that. Is that you take pairs which add up to 100. Okay, 0 and 100 is the first pair, 1 and 99 is the second pair, then 2 and 98 is the third pair. Similarly, so in this way you get 50 pairs and you get 50 that is left out. So you get 5000 as a result of those 50 pairs, and the 50 that is left out you add, so it becomes 5050.
Nice.
Really
okay.
Cool,
So the thing is, the lesson to be derived is that all this mathematical stuff, it's so absorbing. It's so absorbing that you lose track of everything else. There is an experiment which I saw conducted, and I saw a video of that also. Okay, so there's a set of basketball players. Okay, there's a very famous psychology experiment that there's a set of basketball players on the basketball court, and they tell you have to count how many passes are made by each of the team members to each other, and you have to be very, very accurate in your count of that. So while that is happening, there's a man wearing a gorilla suit. He walks across that basketball court. And the fascinating part of it is almost none of the viewers have ever noticed that person in a bizarre gorilla suit walking across the basketball court. Why? Because they're so busy counting the number of passes that people have made that they couldn't. So these numbers really, they absorb you very much. Then there is this 4 square breathing exercise, which I have never done. Maybe somebody else can talk about it. Walking I have done. Calling and meeting a friend is fantastic. Now, all of you who believe in gratitude, I want to tell you all, in terms of this call and meet a friend, there was one person who spent an entire year just in physically traveling to the location of people who had been good to him and spending time with them and expressing his gratitude towards those people. So you can imagine the phenomenal effort that that person undertook. But at the same time, you can imagine the kind of impact it must have had on the people that he visited. So maybe at a smaller scale, you could look at doing that. Maybe over a period of a week, some key people go and personally meet them. Now, now that things have opened up so much, it's quite possible to do that also. So then we count things around us. We make a vision board. In our GCCP batch also, we had made, each one of us had made a vision board for ourselves. So I think, Sarika, you must have also made a vision board, no, as an exercise?
Yeah, sir.
And there's doodling, coloring, puzzles, cleaning, gratitude journal. Or do I maintain a gratitude journal? No, I don't maintain a gratitude journal. And that is not because I'm ungrateful, but I'm overawed by the sheer number of favors that God has bestowed. So it's difficult for me to really count them and post them in a journal. Then hobbies, music, dance, movies, outing, gym, exercise. I'll share something about movies. I have got this fantastic gift that after I've seen a movie, I completely forget it. So after a few years, I can see it again and I will not have any discomfort. And I get fascinated when people start talking about the lessons that they have learned from movies. They say, in this movie, such a thing happens, and this one says that, and this one says that, and the learning to be derived is that, and all that. I'll be very honest, very upfront. When I see movies, I see them to enjoy them. But yes, movies are a good distraction. That point I completely agree. Gym exercise is great, builds your health, releases endorphins, all great stuff. Pets, of course, I simply cannot tell you how beautiful pets are, and they're so selfless, they're so loving, they're so affectionate, they're so unconditional. So they're fantastic. Whoever has the good fortune of having pets, great. Friends and family, change of topic, fun activity, laughing, massage, positive contributions. Wow. When we serve others, even if we selflessly serve others, there is a benefit that we're getting. The benefit that we get is the phenomenal amount of bonding we are able to achieve, the phenomenal amount of oxytocin that we are able to release. So this has a lot of things as far as reflections are concerned. You want to do the reflections now, or we want to do it at the end of the session?
So we can do it at the end.
End of the session?
I think there is just one more topic left, right?
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Then we can.
Okay. So relaxation, meditation, and mindfulness, these are all very closely interlinked things. And what does it say? It's not about trying to throw ourselves away and become something better. It's about be friendly who we already are. See, the main thing that this visual is talking about, the main message that this is giving about, is that we have to be comfortable in our own skin. We do not need to aspire to be somebody else. Each one of us is unique. Each one of us comes with our own strengths, our own attributes. So let us work on building that. And when we are happy with ourselves, it will be much easier for us to make others happy as well. Okay, so that is the crux of what this visual is telling us. This 10-minute method to follow, very little to be explained in that. It's all so simple, it's all so beautifully expressed, it's all so easy to understand. I'll just take a little time on a couple of these things. I would talk about body scan, and I would talk about just sit. I'll first talk about just sit, and then I'll get to body scan. We think that just sit is a useless activity. Yeah, the reality is that just sit is a fantastic thing. It's a beautiful thing that has been put into this slide, because that is when we hit reset. Hitting reset is very important. We need to recharge, we need to rejuvenate ourselves. So when we see that urgent important matrix, and or in that the author Stephen Covey says that fourth quadrant is useless. Actually, if you think of it from a neurological perspective, that fourth quadrant is also not useless. That fourth quadrant is giving us a lot of the stuff that sleep gives us. Okay, so just sit is great. Body scan is the biofeedback that we are taking, and that biofeedback is so important. There are a lot of those guys working within us who are called liver, kidney, heart, all that. We really don't pay much attention to those guys. We are only thinking of our brain all the time. So we need to look at those guys also and understand how tirelessly they work and how they need rest, how they need nutrition. So definitely we have to focus on our liver, our kidneys, our gut. Our gut is way more intelligent than what we believe it to be. So let's take a look at all that also. So people spoke about guided meditation. Now, after the summary, I'll take the reflections. So we talked about emotional well-being and various different 6-step processes. We also said, like wearing your own mask first. The EI coach needs to find his or her emotional well-being well before helping his or her clients. Emotional well-being, of course, is a continuous process, and it's a way of life. Practicing Ashtanga Yoga leads to your emotional well-being. Yes, yoga and emotional well-being are very closely related. On the second point, I just want to give everybody a reality check. As far as the EI coach is concerned, there's a lot of work, a lot of very, very hard work that goes into it. I mean, it's not as if we become a EI coach and we get clients overnight. So their resilience is a very important thing, and our emotional resilience is tested to the core when we are actually waiting for ourselves to get clients. Okay, so I'll stop the share now so that we can look much closer to each other, and we can have a sharing session for the next few minutes before we finally shut down for the day today. Okay, so you can go in any particular order. What have you gathered from the entire session today? You can sum up, each one of you can sum up the essence in not a very detailed kind of a thing. If you want to speak at length, you're at liberty to. Otherwise, 1 or 2 minutes per person is also absolutely fine with me. As it is, yeah.
I'll just just a second.
Sure.
Sir, I'll go ahead
Yeah.
until then.
Yeah. Please,
No,
please.
no, Anupama is here. Anupama is here. You can go.
I'll just finish it off because I think some guests have come and these people want me to be there.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Let Anupama deal with that. Pratishtha,
Yes.
you start off, and as soon as Anupama gets free, she
no,
can.
no, I'll finish it. No,
Okay.
I'll finish it and I'll go. So because
Okay, yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. That's fine. You
So,
can finish it and go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think today was a really good, interesting session. A lot that I could learn, especially from the mindset, like I told you, that I have worked on. So understanding what emotional resilience is, what agility is, and how how we can actually work towards managing our emotions. Very good. There are some practices that I have been following, like meditation and dealing with counting when I get angry, because I'm a temper for me is something that flares up easily, and like I said, I uh, don't have patience. This is another thing. So for all of these reasons, I had to keep working on myself. And like today's and yesterday's sessions that I've been a part of, I think it's going to help me in a big way to actually manage my own emotions and understand others.
Fantastic. And now that we have a gap between today's session and Saturday, maybe I will be able to share certain thought processes, on which you can work during the course of the week also. And
Sure, please.
so that
Please, that would be
we'll have very meaningful sessions when we have the next session also. Okay. Yeah, great.
absolutely. Would be
Okay,
interesting. Thank
Anupama,
you.
you can
I'll
attend.
take leave.
Yeah,
I'll take
attend your
leave.
guest.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Sure,
Good
sure,
evening,
sure.
all. Bye. Bye.
Yes, absolutely, Sarika, the coach study guide. People, let me share this with you. I don't know how many of you all have been through the coach study guide, to what extent, but I can tell you the coach study guide is a fantastically researched piece, and it has just about anything that a coach needs, and it's your hard copy Google, for coaching. So let me put it that way. Yeah. So now Anupama is done. Pratishtha, you can go ahead.
Okay. So I think today's session was pretty reflective, and no, it was good that we were all able to engage in some of the other activities. So I really like that part about the session today. Also, emotional agility and the emotional mastery bits were two areas that stood out for me.
Okay.
No, I think there is more for me to look at, learn, practice, and then probably provide to my clients as well. The methods of distraction, I think nowadays people have become more sensitive about these areas. And no, I'm sure each one of us would be doing something or the other. But personally, I've actually practiced quite a lot of them. And they do tend to work for some time, of course. But then I think when there are specifically pressing, persisting concerns, then I think what works for me is reflecting and cognitively reframing the whole thought process. So journaling for me works wonders.
Oh, superb. Very good.
Yes.
That's such a wonderful habit that is.
Thank you.
Great.
I think that's how it has been for me. And oh yes, one thing I really wanted to highlight was about the session today, because we got to listen to everyone's stories, or at least get to understand a part of them. I felt more connected with everyone today.
So nice to know that. Pratishtha. Yeah.
Thank you.
So now, Loy.
Yeah.
Kalpana.
I can go. So, like everybody,
Sarika, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, like everybody has voiced, I liked the interactions in the session today, reflective questions. Primarily because I'm a reflective person myself, so I do take some time to reflect and think to get back. So that was really good. For me, I think 2 to 3 things that stood out in the session today is emotional agility.
Yeah.
And how it works. and how you can move away from it when you are experiencing a bad emotion. How do you move away from it?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Very much so.
The power to control your emotion is with you. Is like a big loud message that I'm getting, and how you've put it so wisely about emotional resilience. What we practice becomes stronger. So doing that over time and getting and becoming more resilient.
Okay.
I also like the aspect of distractions, the marshmallow challenge connection.
Yeah.
What kept those children engaged?
Correct.
I need to find something for my own children to figure out positive distractions in
life. Yeah. All the very best to you for that, Loy. It's not so simple as we Okay, great.
So those were the points for me. Even relaxation, mindfulness. To some extent, I've tried all of them, and they all work. So I think I will just end there. Thank you.
Okay, great. तो कल्पना, आप कुछ कहना चाहेंगे? Maybe
you can talk in any language you want. Marathi also sir will understand. So
तबीयत खराब है मेरी.
ओह, ओके. ठीक है. तो आप सिर्फ इतना बता दीजिए आपको सेशन कैसा लगा, बस, और हम आपसे नहीं कुछ पूछेंगे.
हाँ, सेशन मुझे अच्छा लगा. इमोशनल मैनेजमेंट, इमोशंस, ओवरऑल इमोशंस मुझे अच्छा लगा.
Okay, good. So Sarika, you are of course a very seasoned player. So your opinion is an absolute expert opinion, I would say. How have you found the session today?
Sir, session was awesome, no doubt. I think everybody has reflected well on it, and it was engaging as well.
Okay.
I think one I could concur was the point that you mentioned on perfection. Like it really takes a bad toll on you. Trying to attain to perfection, and I have personally experienced it. For me, it was like a childhood program, probably done by my parents or whatever. And it really took me a lot of time, years, and a lot of reprogramming on myself to come out of that perfection, imperfection, and perfection being the myth aspect.
Correct. If you look at, let me put it as the Bharti ecosystem, the Indian Bahu is under tremendous pressure to be perfect. So
yeah, right. So exactly. I mean, I just again correlate well because being a woman again, and probably brought up in a quite middle class orthodox kind of thought process. Parents coming from small villages or thing, and then that ideal bahu or ideal girl, ideal daughter, ideal sister, all those things playing part in my upbringing. So yeah, I mean, over the period, it was a nice journey, but I have discovered all those phases slowly. And I think I would like to add for all, like, emotional intelligence is a very nice word to say and talk about, and all these practices. But as I think Pratisha mentioned, when sometimes those triggers are pressed, we just, can't control at times.
I know.
80, 90 times we do, sometimes we don't do, but it's a regular, as you said, sir, it's a journey and it's a regular practice that will only help us. It is not like one time we learn and now we know what is emotional intelligence. That's also, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll put my feed forward rather very briefly. When people feel inspired, when people feel happy, and when people feel that value addition has happened, then I think that I have fulfilled my responsibility, and then I feel good about that. So yes, of course, we are going to be in touch between sessions also, so that we continue to add value and we continue to build expectations and everything. But as of now, this session will now conclude, and we will again meet next Saturday. So till next Saturday, have a wonderful time. We'll surely touch base from time to time, and I've had a great day today.